All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 4:05, and we're about to begin. I don't know where Maria Luisa. She's right there. Maria Luisa, we're about to begin. Shelley, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance again, please? Welcome to all. This is the Tuesday, June 18th Board of Directors meeting, and we have a public hearing. So we have an order before us, and now at the roll call level. Is there anybody else that's in the coffee room that we need to get in here? Please.
Mr. Fernandez Guzman.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Ms. Gutierrez.
Here.
Mr. Evia.
Here.
Mr. Holland. Mr. Lazarte. Mr. Martinez.
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez Pina.
Here.
Mr. Wortman.
Here.
Secretary Pago.
Here.
Treasurer Sanabria.
Here.
Vice Chair Fano.
Here.
Chair Ferre.
Here. We now have a declaration of voting conflicts. Pam?
Members, if any of you have any voting conflicts in relation to any of the action items on the agenda, would you please note it for the record at this time? None shown, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. We're now at the citizens' comments. This is not the public hearing portion, but are there any other than the public hearing citizen comments at this time?
Mr. Chairman, we did receive two requests. Maria Lisa, we received two requests for citizens' comments. Hold on a second. Yes, Mr. Garcia and Ms. Walker.
This is other than the public hearing.
Outside of the public hearing.
Mr. Garcia and Ms. Walker, do you want to address this in anything other than the public hearing issue?
I haven't even looked at the agenda. So you're doing a board meeting before.
We are doing a board meeting before and then the public hearing. That's correct. There will be a vote in the board meeting, and it'll be continued till after the public hearing.
Ms. Walker, the public hearing item is 8H, and it's resolution number 1308. It's an action item.
In regards to what?
This is in regards to the modification of ORT, open road tolling rates for Mainline State Road 836.
And we can speak about that now?
No, ma'am. There will be a public hearing for that, and I will recognize you at that time.
Okay,
Right.
but in this meeting, other than the ORT, I'm not prepared to speak right now.
Okay.
I'll just.
Okay. Mr. Garcia? All right. Okay. So in other words, there was some confusion on that night. That's totally understandable.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on to the rest of the agenda, there is a modification to the agenda based on the Budget and Finance Committee meeting that just happened. Item number 8E, as in Ernesto, is actually not going to be on this agenda. It was endorsed to the Operations Committee, and it will return to the Board of Directors at the July board meeting. So, item 8E.
Are there any objections to that? Otherwise, we're going along with the agenda as it is before you. The next item is the approval of the summary minutes of the May 28th meeting. Mr. Wortman moves. Ms. Smith-Fano seconds. Is there further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved. The Executive Director's report.
Mr. Chair, board members, I'm going to keep my report short. As many of you know, MDX participated in this month's Transportation Summit hosted by the CITT on June 6th. Chairman Ferre was a panelist on corridor development, and Secretary Pago moderated the session. The issue of the summit was what's the next big project. The mayor had the keynote address, and he laid out his priority, which was to link downtown Miami with Miami Beach as a priority. MDX laid out its plans of using our expressways as a platform for safe, reliable transportation, including bus rapid transit or express buses. We made that presentation, and we look forward to continue to work with Miami-Dade County on implementing them. On June 12th, I participated in our panel discussion at Good Government Initiative, which is hosted by former County Commissioner Katie Sorensen. The very good information. I spoke about two of the projects that MDX is working on, the US 1 busway and the extension of State Road 836 Southwest, which is an EIS that will begin. Staff participated on a webinar on June 10th and a public review on June 11th for the subject of public hearing that we'll be hearing later. Based on the commentary of the committees and many of the board members, and I'll recognize Ms. Gutierrez, Board Member Gutierrez, who has asked for this for many, many years, and I want to thank her and thank the Department of Transportation. We finalized an agreement with the Florida Turnpike Enterprise where they're going to be submitting to us, giving to us for our use, phone numbers of all SunPass customers that have a Miami-Dade County address. And there's certain stipulations on what uses we can have for those SunPass, for those telephone numbers. And at Public Communications Committee, Mr. Chairman, there was a discussion of developing a policy to ensure that we comply and safeguard that information and not just hand it out to third parties. I do want to report on two projects. Both are on schedule and budget. That's 874 widening from Kendall Drive to the Palmetto and Central Boulevard in the airport. I also want to report on the results of a bid letting that occurred this week. As the board knows, we've entered into a partnership with the Florida Turnpike Enterprise, and we took advantage of the fact that they were going to bid a project on the Homestead extension of the Florida's Turnpike. They're going to widen and add managed lanes in that area. We took advantage of the bid of the process to include the bridge structures, the superstructure of the extension of 874, the 874-10. We included it into their bid package. They put it out as a design build project, and I'm very happy to report that MDX experienced over $13 million of savings on those bids, and the Department of Transportation saved over $60 million on those bids. So I'm very happy with the partnership, and
Can you tell us what that is on a percentage basis?
Alfred was actually on the Alfred was actually on the selection committee.
Mr. Chairman, the MDX percentage was 50%. Our cost estimate for the bridges were at $26 million, and prices came in at 13, and the Turnpike estimate was $180 million, and theirs came in at about 120 or so. So they did see an
amazing. That's about as good as I've heard since this recession started. I don't think we've had anything quite that dramatic, which shows you that the community, that the construction community is still hungry.
Yeah, and I also think that it was the process followed. I think the changing the bid process or the procurement process from a standard design, bid, and then build it to a design build and allowing designers and contractors to work together and be innovative showed the results. And that process by itself yielded these savings. So I thank the staff, Alfred and his team, the department, who is a conduit on the joint participation agreement, and the Turnpike for being a very good partner. The last thing I do want to report on is we have a partnership, as everyone knows, with Florida International University. We've actually entered into a formal agreement for years with the Lehman Center for Transportation Research. They've been doing many pieces of work for us. And one of those pieces is on our bridges. And Alfred, if you want to show the video really quick, it's two seconds.
Wait. Is it 2 seconds? Because we have a lot of people waiting here, and
2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes, sir.
All right.
It's up to you.
But all right, 2.5 minutes, but quickly.
And that will conclude my report. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
This is the first time that anybody's ever done this in the state of Florida. which is measuring segmental bridges and installing sensors prior to construction and having data come out of bridges. So it's almost, in essence, a smart bridge. So when FIU approached us to put in these sensors that measure time-dependent losses, we wanted to be a part of that, and we wanted to learn from our bridges.
We put in about 96 sensors, 16 in each segment. We have 6 segments that we're monitoring. The sensor itself was installed, all done by 2 graduates and some undergraduate who go out in the field doing the construction site. I personally go there to supervise as well as show them how to install.
The segmental bridge sections themselves are pretty large. I would say they're 9-10 feet inside. So you have to climb up there. You got to be careful. You're walking on a rebar. You got to make sure your footing's right. You got to watch where you step.
I think this technique is more useful because you can actually know the shrinkage, the creep within the structure.
So as the concrete shrinks or creeps, it'll push in on the sensors here on the end and compress it, and it'll get conducted through the cable, and it'll measure the change in strain in the concrete itself.
Making concrete is like cooking, right? There's different way to cook a specific food. So that's the same thing. So obviously the variation of these properties make it harder for engineering to come up with a formula that can precisely predict the behavior of it. And because of such nature, because of the variability of the properties of concrete, the key is just, rather than try to do that, is just try to monitor the health of it. It's just like we're monitoring the pacemaker in your heart or something. So it's like we're monitoring the pulse of the bridge.
Every 2-year cycle, every bridge in the United States has to be inspected. And this data that would come out of these sensors would definitely help us and future design and construction engineers learn from what's happening over time with these bridges. To clarify, Mr. Chairman, that piece was produced by FIU, and MDX did not spend anything on that piece itself.
I think it's a wonderful piece, and I commend you and all those that participated. And we are now at the General Counsel's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very briefly, and before I get started, Board Member Fernandez Guzman did alert me that after he had more time to take a look at the conflict report, that he does have a conflict that he wants to declare. And Mr. Guzman, I don't know that you've done this before, but you will need to see the Executive Secretary, and she has a form for you to fill out. But if you could declare that for the record on which item?
8C.
8C. Thank you, sir. And very quickly, and I think that this kind of highlights how important it is in working with public entities, and it is different from the private sector. But I also want to note for the record there is a cure issue that we have related to an email from Board Member Fernandez Guzman to Director Rodriguez, and he inadvertently hit reply to all, and so we are making that June 7th, 2013 email part of your packet, and it's part of the public record that we're noting today, where he was discussing his views on having verifiable data when we're getting information from the public and from evaluation processes that we go through for projects. So that is part of the record today as well. And I believe Mr. Guzman has shared most of those views, I think, in the Budget and Finance Committee, and we'll have an opportunity to share those publicly today as well.
Very good. And I again apologize. I'm used to a completely different environment.
It's tough to get used to, sir.
Thank you.
One very quick thing that I wanted to mention to the board members, in this past legislative session, there was a bill that was passed and has now been signed by the governor, SB 50, and what that does, it does relate to Chapter 286. In the past, individuals did not have any right to be heard at Chapter 286 proceedings. What this bill does is to require Chapter 286 boards at some point in the process before there is a final decision to give the public an opportunity to be heard. I am very pleased to report to you that after having reviewed that legislation, the policy that this authority already has in place in terms of citizen comment, I believe complies with the requirements of that new act that takes effect October 1st of this year. So my congratulations to you all for being very forward-thinking in that. And then finally, very quickly, next month I will be attending the Transportation Research Board annual legal workshop for transportation lawyers. And one of the things that I did want to mention, and I'm sure the chair will be interested in this as well, is that there is a much heightened focus on both user fees and tolling, that this has really been more of a traditional DOT-centric type group, and they are looking, less at federal funding and more at user fees.
That's happening all over.
All over, and they are also, and Ms. Steelman's very involved in the Emerging Technologies Committee, and they are looking very, very strongly at all of the platooning items and vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to roadway communications, and so that's a much stronger focus of the attorneys and how we're going to deal with all of those issues, not so much from a technological standpoint, but hopefully having the law keep up with all of these very rapidly changing technologies. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We now have the MPO representative.
Thank you very much. The MPO meeting for this month is next week, this week Thursday, so I have
we'll
no
get a
report
report from you at the next meeting.
The following meeting.
All right, thank you. And the treasurer's report.
Mr. Chairman, there was a meeting before this, a number of you attended, where we had some items that we will also consider in the action agenda. So suffice to say, to keep it short and brief, Marie, would you just read basically the bullet points on the treasurer's report? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Since the interest of time, overall revenue year to date is $112 million, above the forecast of 106, and operating expenses are right on line to our budget. We do anticipate to come in right around 4% of the overall budget. So all in all, the net revenues for the fiscal year about $29.8 million.
Any other questions, Mr. Chairman? That would conclude.
All right, thank you very much for the treasurer's report, and congratulations to the treasurer and to Marie for an excellent job that you've all been doing. Now we have the committee reports, and I would hope that we would have a waiver of those reports. There's a move that it be waived. Is there second? Second, further discussion? Unless I hear otherwise, that item that's waived. We're now at the election of authority officers, and Pam, I turn this matter over to you.
Good afternoon, members. Many of you have been through this process before. We did go over the traditional proceedings last month, and I've had no questions submitted, and no one has called for any clarifications. So can I assume that everybody's familiar with the process? Okay, we'll move forward. Thank you. Do we have any members that are participating by communications technology? Either Mr. Lasarte or Mr. Holland on the phone?
Robert Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. And just as a reminder, as we go through the process, when we get to the point of voting, that your ballots are in your packet. They are color-coded, and we will have, you must note your name on there. Florida law does not allow anonymous votes, and then after all of the written ballots are received, anybody that is voting by communications technology, we will then get your vote after all of the written ballots are received. Mr. Holland, are you going to vote verbally, or do you need to have Ms. Navia Lobo's email, or are you all set up for that?
I can do verbally. No,
okay.
No hidden agenda. I can do verbally.
All right. Thank you, sir. With that, traditionally we open with vote on authority chair, and at this point in the agenda, I'm going to open the floor for nominations for MDX chair.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Mayor Ferre for chair.
All right.
Second.
I have nomination in 2 seconds from Mr. Sanabria and Ms. Gutierrez for Mayor Maurice Ferre as board chair. Do I have any other nominations? With no other nominations for board chair, I will close the floor to nominations, and I would ask for a motion that Mayor Ferre...
By acclamation.
By acclamation. Thank you, Mr. Sanabria, and seconded by Mr. Wortman.
And that's Maurice A. Ferre, correct?
Well, I'm surprised and touched, and I thank all of you.
Make sure Your Honor.
And you have any other comment that you wish to make at this point?
I think thank you speaks
All
a
right.
lot, and I think there are a lot of people waiting to speak here, so
All right.
let's move on.
We'll move on to the office of vice chair, and I am now opening the floor for nominations for vice chair.
Make a motion that we elect Marisa Gutierrez as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Marisa has been a chair, and she's been vice chair before. I think it's very important, now that you've elected me chair, that we have someone in vice chair that works in tandem and in conjunction. And I think Maritza is a person that meets that qualification, and I would so nominate her.
Thank you. Do I have any other nominations for the office of vice chair? There being no further nominations, the floor is closed. And can I have a motion that Ms.
Acclamation.
Thank you, Mr. Sanabria, Mr. Bortman. And congratulations to Ms. Gutierrez as our new vice chair. Moving on to, this is the fastest election I think we've had since I've been here. Move on to the office of treasurer. I'm now opening the floor for...
Question.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question. Gonzalo, are you interested in this? And if so, we need to get the legal issues determined on this.
I would, if you would like me to be, yes, of course, according to the vote, yeah, it's up to you.
Well, the issue, I think, Ms. Gutierrez, I recognize you for the purposes of...
At the appropriate time, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment on that.
Well, then, but before we get nominations, I think we ought to air this, because I think we need a legal opinion on this.
Well, Mr. Ferre, if I can, since I did open the floor for nominations, I would like to recognize Ms. Smith-Lano.
Thank you. You recognize her.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Carlos Guzman, Fernandez Guzman for treasurer.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second for Mr. Carlos Fernandez Guzman as treasurer. Do I have a second any other nominations? Any other nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to retire my name from consideration. I think that Carlos Fernandez Guzman will be an excellent treasurer, and he can carry forth with great speed. So.
All
and
right.
I also request that we do so by acclamation.
Second. And that's second by Mr. Wortman. Thank you. Congratulations to Mr. Fernandez Guzman as our new treasurer. Thank you. Members, as you are aware, the office of secretary is not required to be filled by a member of the board.
I nominate Maria Luisa Navia.
She's so lucky. She's going to get all the nominations.
I'm going to save you time.
A nomination and a second for Ms. Maria Luisa Navia Lobo to continue as our executive secretary. Do I have a motion that be by acclamation? Yes. All right. Thank you. Anyone opposed? By acclamation. Thank you. Over the last 3 years, I believe, Eileen Figueroa has, and I butchered your name, Figueroa, has served as the assistant secretary.
Assistant.
And we have a motion and second by Mr. Martinez and Mr. Wortman that Eileen continue as our Assistant Secretary.
Move
Any
that by
objections?
acclamation.
By acclamation. Thank you very much. I'm starting to feel somewhat useless.
I would never describe you in any way, shape, or form.
Are we concluded with this?
Ever.
In the interest of time, we concluded?
Excuse me, sir?
Are we concluded?
We are concluded,
Thank you
sir.
very much.
Congratulations to the new slate of officers. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Now we're on item number 8B, approval of resolution 1307, legal review of information. This has been endorsed by the Policy and Planning Committee. Does anybody need to discuss this? Can we move on it? It's been approved by the Planning Committee. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Item 8B. There's a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'd like to vote no on that one.
Okay. Let the record reflect that Louis voted no. We're on item C, 8C. Contract, bond counsel, financial legal services, and general counsel support. Approval of contract rewards, and that was endorsed by the Policy and Planning Committee on June 14th. For the purposes of discussion, is there a motion to that?
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. It now under discussion. Does anybody want to speak on this issue? Nope. If not, then we'll go for a vote. Is there any objection to that? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. We're now on D, which is MDX procurement contract, federal legislative advocacy and consulting services that was endorsed by the Intergovernmental and Public Communications Committee on 6/14. For purposes of discussion, is there a motion? Moved by Ms. Gutierrez. Jose seconds. Mr. Avia seconds. Is there any discussion on item D, 8D? By the Intergovernmental Public Communications Committee. If not, are we ready for a vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're on item E. I'm sorry. I stand corrected. We're on F, debt management plan. Of a motion, you want to make the motion?
Yeah, we'd like to move it forward. The new treasurer-elect, but if you have any comments, sir?
Mr. Sanabria
yeah,
makes the motion.
Like
Mr.
yeah.
Fernandez Guzman seconds. Is there further discussion? Is there any discussion? Are we ready for a vote on this item? This is item 8F. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're now on item G, which is procurement contract number RFQ 0908, miscellaneous construction engineering and inspection services, CEI. Director?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members, the substitute item was updated. It should be in your green folders because there was modifications at the operations committee. So the new item is in your
All right, for
agenda.
purposes of discussion, is there a motion to item G? Mr. Warman moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sanabria. Under discussion. Does anybody want to be heard on this?
Thoroughly discussed.
As long as everybody understands that it's in the packet, because the
everybody
figure
understand
changed.
what we've done and what the operations committee did. All right, are we ready for a vote on item G? Are we ready for a vote? All right, all those in favor of item G say aye. Aye. Opposed? So it is again carried unanimously. We're now at the public hearing. This is resolution number 1308, modification of open road tolling rates for mainline SR 836. Would you read it into the record, and then I've got a statement that I need to make, and then we're into the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I'll read the entire resolution that was offered by Board Member Smith-Fano. And I'll be quick. Whereas the Miami-Dade County Expressway Authority is a body politic and corporate, public instrumentality, and an agency of the state established by Ordinance 94-215, adopted on December 13, 1994, as amended by the Board of County Commissioners of Miami-Dade County, Florida, under and pursuant to the Florida Expressway Authority Act, Part 1 of Chapter 348 Florida statutes. And whereas MDX has embarked on the conversion of the entire MDX system to open road tolling in order to close the system and to the greatest extent practicable eliminate untolled movements on the system. And whereas MDX has developed long-range plans to construct projects on the system to improve mobility and reduce congestion in Miami-Dade County. And whereas on MDX on March 19, 2013, subsequent to a public hearing, adopted new ORT toll rates for State Road 112 and State Road 836. And whereas subsequent to the March 19, 2013, public discourse suggests it is advisable to further consider the level of ORT toll rates for mainline State Road 836. And whereas a public review process was undertaken and a subsequent public hearing was conducted today, June 18th, to again review, discuss, and receive public input on the bidirectional mainline toll rates for State Road 836. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Miami-Dade County Expressway Authority. All of the previous recitals are incorporated into the resolution as made as if fully set out therein. The attached description to your resolution demonstrates the toll rates for State Road 836 reduces the ORT tolls on main line of State Road 836 from 70 cents to 60 cents at each of the 3 proposed bidirectional mainline gantries, but leaves the previously adopted ramp tolls for State Road 836 unchanged and would hereby be adopted and should take effect upon conversion of the State Road 836 to ORT. Section 3 provides for severability. If any section, paragraph, clause, or provision of this resolution shall be held to be invalid or ineffective for any reason, the remainder of this resolution shall continue in full force and effect, it being expressly hereby found and declared that the remainder of this resolution would have been adopted despite the invalidity or ineffectiveness of such section, paragraph, clause, or provision. It is noted that this resolution is adopted in compliance with the open meeting requirements. It is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of the authority concerning and relating to the adoption of this resolution were adopted in open meetings of the governing body of the authority and all deliberations of the governing body of the authority and any of its committees excuse me, that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public and in compliance with all legal requirements. The effective date of the resolution is that it shall take effect and be enforced immediately upon its adoption and shall rescind any previously adopted toll rates for State Road 836. And attached to it, you will see there is a chart that shows, it's very similar to the one that was adopted on March 19th, but it just changes the toll rates for the bidirectional gantries from 70 cents to 60 cents.
Is that it?
That's it, sir.
Okay. Now, here's a statement that I wish to put into the record so that you all understand what we're here for. The MDX public hearing on proposed resolution 1308 to consider a modification of toll rates from the mainline bidirectional ORT gantries on State Road 836 Dauphin Expressway from the previously adopted 70 cents to the proposed 60 cents in the offered resolution is hereby opened. Now, I want to make sure you understand that what we're here to talk about is whether the rate is 70 cents or 60 cents. That's what this public hearing is about. It is not about anything else. It's not about palm trees, and it's not about other issues that are maybe very important, but are not relevant to this public hearing. We've already had one public hearing where some of you were here and spoke, and so I just want to make sure that you understand that, because I don't want to be rude to you, but I'm going to try to hold everyone to the issue that is before us. Now, anyone wishing to speak on this issue that has not signed in, Tere, would you please raise your hand? This is Ms. Tere Garcia, who will assist you in signing in if you wish to speak that you have not already done so. Now, I've got a list of people that have signed in, and I will call them as they signed in, except for the public officials, which I will of course take out of order as we always do, out of a courtesy to them. If you are speaking on behalf of an organization, please complete the information relating to your organization. If you wish to speak on behalf of other individuals, please submit the speaker cards together and note on whose behalf you are speaking. An individual may speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Who's going to be the timekeeper here, Maria Luisa? You're the timekeeper. Okay. If you are speaking on behalf of other individuals, you may speak on behalf of no more than 9 individuals for a total of minutes in order that we can accommodate all persons wishing to be heard. Is that clear? Pam, would you explain that?
You can speak for a maximum of 9 minutes if you're representing other individuals, so that would be for a maximum of 3 additional
So in other
persons.
words, if 3 people want to waive, people who have signed in, want to waive their speaking rights and give it to another individual, they can do so for a total of 9 minutes. In other words, 3 individuals can speak as one if you wish. I will allow that. And you have to let me know up front that that's the case so that I can then give you the 9 minutes. When your time is within 30 seconds of being up, you will be given a prompt so that you have an opportunity to conclude your remarks. Okay, Maria Luisa? 30 seconds before. I again ask the cooperation of everyone present that you not make disruptive sounds such as shouts or clapping in order that everyone who wishes to speak is extended the courtesy of presenting their thoughts in an uninterrupted fashion, and so that the MDX board can hear and consider all comments brought before them at this public hearing. Anyone who cannot comply with this request for order and courtesy will be escorted from the meeting room. After everyone has had an opportunity to speak, the MDX board will then be able to discuss the proposed resolution and seek information from staff consultants as to any questions the board members may have based on matters raised either during the public hearing or during the board discussion. Does anyone on the MDX board have any questions concerning the procedures and the process that we will follow during this public hearing? Since none is shown, let us then commence with the first public speakers. We have a lot of elected officials. I might say that some of you, or many of you, have written me letters, and strangely enough, with the exception of one letter, 2 letters, one was for and one was against, they misspelled my name. I am Maurice A. Ferre, and everyone has written to Maurice E. Ferre. I don't know how the E got around, but evidently the E indicates to me that I guess there's been some discussion on this thing. But just for the record, I want you to know that I am Maurice A. Ferre. Now, the first speaker before us is Representative Jose Felix Diaz of District 116. Representative Diaz, welcome to MDX.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am one of the Maurice E. Ferre folks, so I do apologize for that. The first letter had E, and we just all use that as a template. But I did want to address you. There's a lot of friends here, a lot of folks that I've met along the way, and I am currently the representative for District 116, which goes from 117th Avenue through the Palmetto, so a huge portion of the 836 runs through my district, which is Doral, Westchester, and parts of Kendall. I represent about 160,000 people. I live in Kendall and I work downtown, so I'm actually a user of the 836. And the reason I'm here today is because obviously right now as a community we're coming out of a recession. People have seen increases in their car insurance, they've seen increases in their property taxes, they've seen increases in gasoline prices, and every little bit counts. And this item before you, whether it's to go from 70 to 60 or to go back to the original amount, is something that my voters are interested in. They have seen, a dramatic increase in all roads over the years, and you're really paying to get into a traffic jam sometimes. And it's very frustrating for people, especially with SunPass and open tolling, where you don't get the bill to the end of the month, to see these dramatic increases. So what I ask for you today is your consideration. When you go through the motions and you hear the people and you hear the various representatives that will speak today, all we ask is for your kindness and for your consideration of our request to try to not increase these tolls. I know that it's really a reversal of a previous decision, but it would mean a lot to the voters in my district, and it would mean a lot to me.
Thank you very much, Representative Diaz. Representative David Richardson, District 113. Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I came today to also lend my support to rolling back these the increase. I recognize that you're only hearing today the issue of whether or not we should be moving from 70 cents to 60 cents, and not the public policy issue of whether or not we should be making the additional stops. So. I want to add my voice that we are just coming out of a recession, and we have had tough economic times of recent. I have the great privilege of representing District 113, and that's all of Miami Beach and downtown Miami, and also half of Little Havana out to 27th Avenue. So a large number of my constituents are very concerned about this issue, and as you know, in that area there are a lot of people that are at the lower economic scale, and they're very concerned about this. Even a 10-cent difference will make a difference in some lives. So I would very much encourage you to roll back this tax increase so that it's 60 cents versus 70 cents, and I urge your consideration. Thank you for your time.
Representative Jeanette Nunez, District 119. Representative Nunez.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and share my comments with you on this very important issue. I believe that it is obviously apparent by my written letter that I am strongly opposed to the increase. I support Vice Chair Fano's proposal. I would also like to see if we could move in the direction of actually rolling back those tolls altogether. And I understand that you all are faced with very difficult decisions as it relates to allocating resources. Clearly, the last few years have been challenging for all of us, in particular in the state. We've seen the economic burden of our constituents. My district, which is District 119, basically is all of West Kendall. And as you can imagine, I represent the area which is, in my opinion, most impacted by your decisions here today. And while I recognize that, as I said, you all have difficult decisions to make, the great thing about being elected in the state legislature and in a system that's term limited is the constant accountability that we have to our voters. We're elected every 2 years. We have an 8-year term limit, and so we are really and truly connected to the people in ways that some other governmental entities and quasi-governmental entities are not. And so it's incumbent upon me to represent the interests of my constituents. And for that reason, I stand here before you today, and I ask you please take into consideration many of the things that my colleagues have shared with you and will continue to share with you. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to continue to work with each and every one of you. I appreciate the time that you've spent in coming and reaching out to me, but I do have some serious concerns, and I hope that you all will continue to take those into consideration. Thank you very much.
Representative Nunez. The next speaker will be Representative Eric Fresson of District 114.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, Executive Director, and board members. I'm Eric Fresson, State Representative, House District 114, here to speak on the item. I want to give a little bit of a perhaps a different twist to this argument, and I want to start, even though I know I only have 3 minutes, by putting a quick context into place. I'm the first one throughout the state of Florida that always holds up MDX as the perfect embodiment of a governmental public-private partnership. I think it's efficient. I think the way that expressway authorities work are efficient, and I think that MDX, for the most part, has done a great job over the years. Secondly, I'm not an anti-tolling guy. I've actually always said I prefer user fees over broad-based targetless taxes such as a sales tax or anything else. So a user fee as a toll, I'm not a line in the sand opponent to. The reason why I speak in pausing opposition towards raising the tolls right now is because there is some information that has been provided to me and that I've seen that is a little bit disconcerting as far as the approach and the decisions that must be taken before you add or increase, even if it's a user fee or a tax. And in my opinion, whether it's fully governmental or P3 governmental, whatever the body is, I think it is incumbent upon any governmental body, particularly when it has the authority to either tax, toll, or user fee, that it exhausts every single possibility at its disposal before increasing any of it. And I'll just highlight 2 points in particular that cause great concern to me as far as whether or not the toll increase is exactly the solution and the remedy towards the funding needs that the MDX has. The first one is your collection rate. My opinion is, before you think about increasing tolls permanently, whether it's toll as you go, or whatever it may be, have you exhausted? Have you spent a year, 2 years exhausting your capture rate, which is seemingly low for everybody using your toll roads right now? Secondly, have you equitably spread your ability to toll? I think every single time that I come back from Tallahassee into the MIC, not every single exit out of the MIC, which is a rent-a-car, which is where most of your tourists come into, do they pay a toll on their way out? Have we exhausted the possibilities of having every rent-a-car make sure that they have a Sun Pass to make sure that our capture rates go up? My point, and I know that we only have 3 minutes, Mr. Chair, and I will defer to that point, is I have a little bit of discomfort as to whether or not every single exhaustive option has been taken by the MDX, by its staff, within the resources that it has and its ability to increase its existing revenues, be it through current tolls. Now, I'm not, again, I know some people have the opinion of rolling back tolls. I'll say that the current tolls, let's say it for the record, may be equitable, but are we capturing the current rate at its highest point? If we captured it at 20%, 30% higher, could we then lower the current toll increase plan over the next 20 years from 70 to maybe 40? Have those things been exhausted? I'm not completely comforted that they have, and I would just ask the board to pause and perhaps exhaust all of those options under its current powers and current revenues as they exist before you propose something that will be permanent as an increase over the next 20 or 30 years. Mr. Chair, I thank you for your time, and being one of 5, none of which have middle names, 12 grandchildren, none of which, not that I have, but across the board, none of which have middle names, I apologize for the middle name. Thank you.
President, let me tell you that thank you very much for your 3 very intelligent points, and thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I know that there are people here that are representing the county commissioners, and I see that you have not put your name down as speakers, but out of courtesy to you, would you raise your hands, those of you that are representing members of the county commission that are here? Just stand up and raise your hand. So I see three county commission representatives. We're now, I recognize Mayor Edward McDougall of the municipality of Cutler Bay. Mayor McDougall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate the time to come before you. It's seems to be a repeat. This is the 3rd time I've been before you. The first time, and I'm going to keep this strictly to the tolls. I am going to adhere to your request, and I will make sure that I do that. The first time I stood alone, the second time I stood alone, I think today there's an army. And I'm pleased that we have 6 mayors, we have 3 commissioners, and we have 6 state representatives and 1 state senator who represent almost 2 million people. This is the amazing number to me. And I understand your task. I sit behind a dais. I know that it's not easy, especially when you have those come before you tell you everything you're doing is wrong. I know that everything you're doing is not wrong. I know it's not easy. I know it's not difficult. Mr. Chair, I know you have your dream of how we'll use these roads someday for mass transit. I know that vision, and it's a good vision. But the reality here today is that almost 2 million of your residents and our residents are asking you to please just limit this to 60 cents. Give them that break. Show the compassion that I know that you have, because you're taxpayers too. You pay those tolls as well. Try to build in as many efficiencies as you possibly can. And I also ask that you look to the future of where we're going to be as a county. Are we going to be a county of concrete? Are we going to be a county of asphalt? Or are we going to try and build into your vision, into the system, down the road with the other agencies to try and make sure that these roads are used for other purposes as well in terms of mass transit? So I turn to your compassion today and understanding your position very clearly and applauding you for the work that you do, and ask that you listen to almost 2 million residents who are asking you for this small break. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
The next speaker will be Mayor Cindy Lerner.
Good afternoon.
First of all, thank you for giving this yourselves and the public this opportunity for reconsideration. The issue of whether it's 60 or 70 cents, I would propose to you that that's a false choice, that as some previous speakers have mentioned, rolling back is important and actually critical at this point in your considerations. And I will tell you as a mayor, those of you who have had the opportunity to sit and craft a budget and make your budgets transparent and make your budgets responsive to real needs and real vision for the future is something that I think the public is telling you hasn't been done in this case. And that what is most important is working together with all of the other entities in this county that put together and are responsible in their own little silos for putting together planning for transit and transportation in this county, that connectivity is missing. And that by having a summit, it was very clear from the attendance at that summit that this county expects more from each entity, and we're not satisfied that we're getting it. I'm the first vice president for the Miami-Dade League of Cities. The League of Cities has just now created a transportation committee because we are very uncomfortable as leaders in the community being closest to our constituents of everybody and having that responsibility to explain on the street, in the grocery store, why we're doing what we're doing and hear the needs from our constituents. We want a voice. We want a voice at every aspect of what is going on behalf of our constituents. One other item that is critical that this board take into consideration, as every board. I've just been appointed to the MPO Long Range Planning Steering Committee, and I've made the same comments there. Miami-Dade County Commissioners just recently signed off on the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Action Plan, which has 115 recommendations that Monroe, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County are going to have to look at, consider, and integrate into future planning. One of the most important parts of that is transit. And transit is sorely lacking in the MPO long-range plan and even more sorely lacking in your budgets. In fact, it's missing completely in your budgets. So I would ask that you roll back, that you sit down and vision for the future and start incorporating the critical need to build financing for transit in this county and not just building more infrastructure to move more cars around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to recognize Sue Loisel, who is a council member of Cutler Bay. Would you please stand to be recognized? Thank you. We also have the Honorable Carlos Lopez Cantera, who is the county property appraiser. Mr. Lopez Cantera, would you like to address the MDX board? If not, the chair recognizes you, and we now move to the non-elected officials. And Tere, you need to give us the order of the speakers as you have them.
Armando Sotolongo, a constituent that brought a letter from Representative Carlos Trujillo.
Mr. Sotolongo, the chair recognizes you.
Good afternoon, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. I am very concerned with the decisions of the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority to increase the toll of State Road 112 and 836. Unfortunately, if this proposal is adopted, much of many of constituency in Northwest Miami-Dade County will be greatly affected. According to your public review meeting presentation, a commuter will see a 70, was at 70, now it's 60 increase in tolls, cents increase in tolls from Northwest 137th Avenue to Miami International Airport. I find this increase to be unjust as its negatively affects my constituents who commit to work in the eastern portion of the county using State Road 112 and 836. I respectfully request the board reconsider this decision. Sincerely, Carlos Trujillo. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Next speaker.
Aurora Garcia.
Is Ms. Garcia here?
Aurora Garcia. She's going to provide the 3 minutes to Mr. Carlos Garcia. Pat Malone.
Hi, I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Pat Malone from 29325 Southwest 202 Avenue, Redland, and I promise not to dwell on the trees. I kind of wanted to do it a little differently since I say the same thing each time, but this is a poem to you all. I have 3 minutes to address the board with all the concerns I want to report. Too much toll money spent on trees, too much spent on landscaping fees. You say that's included in your budget, but then raise toll rates to fund new projects. MDX has our future all planned. The 836 you want to expand. Westward to the agricultural land. Urban development boundary be damned. You'll make your proposals to the county commission, and with developers lobbying, you might get their permission. Extending 836 would be extremely unwise. Raising toll rates will cause our demise. And the tourist industry will be in big trouble if those without SunPass have to pay double. Oh, I have my 3 minutes to voice opposition, but will the majority of you voting really listen? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malone. That was a beautifully and well thought out composed poem. Thank you. Who's the next speaker?
Moraima Lugo Morales.
Good afternoon.
Recognizes you, ma'am.
I have had the privilege to address you this afternoon on behalf of Representative Michael Bileca, and reads as follows. Chairman Maurice Ferrer, dear Chairman Ferrer, it has come to my attention that there is a decision to increase the tolls on state roads 112 and 836. This decision would adversely impact my constituents, placing an unnecessary strain on commuters. Our citizens would be burdened by this extra cost to take the expressway, which could lead them to take local roads, creating more congestions. I am urging MDX not to adopt the proposal to increase the tolls, as it will disproportionately affect constituents in my community. Sincerely, Michael Bileca. I have 3 extra minutes now, right? No. But I have 1 minute. That's all I'm going to take of your time. I told you my address, or you don't need to? No. Your decision that you stated this afternoon that it is going to be between 70 or 60 cents, which is your decision making. I will tell you that it is not written on stone, and you have the capability and ability not to increase anything due to the fact that most of, not me because I'm retired, I receive my pension, I receive my Social Security, I have Medicare, and all that stuff addressed with being older. That would impact the people who are using the roads at this time that do have to go to and from work. The prices of food will increase. The services will increase for those people that will be using the roads to and from to our services. So I do appreciate you taking the time, like somebody else mentioned before, to think a little bit about it and not do a drastic thing and take a little more time to reconsider, because now it's 60 cents. What is it going to be next year? 80 cents, because it didn't give you the enough money that you were requesting. And I do appreciate your time given to me this afternoon. Wish you a very happy afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lugo Morales. The next speaker?
Mariano Cruz.
And the speaker after that, so that
And the speaker after that is Joseph Bazard. And the speaker after that is Mamie Astar.
Cruz.
Hi, Mauricio. Mariano Cruz, 1227 Northwest 26th Street. I am the chairman of the Alapara Business Development Authority. And Vietnam Era Veteran Service Connected Disability. I don't pay taxes to the city, to the county, or anything. But I pay federal taxes, and I pay. And federal taxes are possible most of these roads here. And now we're paying taxes on top of taxes too. I don't worry about, I know the increase, I don't know, but I worry about the exit there on 27th Avenue that goes to Alapara there. Are there going to be a toll road there too? No. On the exit on 27th Avenue? Is any new toll there? Because I look at the map, I didn't see, I saw marked toll road, I didn't see.
Yeah, there is
on 27th Avenue? That's going to impact Northwest 20th Street, the main business there in Alapara. People going out there, so I don't know where they go. They go to they stay at the shopping centers or anything. And remember, that's jobs, work. That's what we do there. We do that impact there. It's not the Tallahassee, because I go to Tallahassee too, and the legislature. I have property in Polk County. I don't see any toll roads there in Polk County. The main hub, the highway there, Highway 4, 75, 27, Highway 60, 4-lane highways that we pay for days, because Miami-Dade is a donor county. The money goes to Tallahassee, and Tallahassee sends it to Polk County. They don't send the money here. I don't know what the Dade County legislation is doing, but they do very little, but they don't take care of us here. That gives me an opportunity to get in the soapbox and come here and talk for my people in Alapara, because I don't get paid to be here, but I have the wherewithal and the time, because I am rich, because I got plenty of time to come here. I go to another meeting and everything. I got plenty of time to go to the city, and you know that. To the city commission, I am an expert in the 2 minutes delivery. I don't need PowerPoint. I am a Microsoft specialist, an electrical engineer specializing in power supply. I didn't work as an electrical engineer here because I don't need to work. I don't need to work for FPL. I don't need to be working for a corporation. I work for the post office to give me more time to do everything I want. Thank you very much for your time. Bye.
Cruz.
And then Ms. Astar, if you can follow.
Chair recognizes you, sir.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. I'm speaking on behalf of American Association of Taxi Cab. We cab driver in Miami-Dade County. Every year, we pay at least $5,000, which is in toll and airport taxes. And that's included, I think it varies from year to year, 35 or 50 cents on gas tax. We pray you to keep that tax, that toll tax very low, because that will encourage interstate commerce and interstate commerce. You can figure if we take a passenger from Florida City to Miami Beach during weekend, if the tax is very low, more of them will come, and the county will make more money. If it is downtown Miami, in Miami, we bring that passenger. If he spends less money, he will go in the club or restaurant, he will spend less money. And for that reason, it will be in the interest of of the economy of the country to keep the toll charge as low as you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mia Starr, then Carlos Garcia, then Barry White, then Jane Walker.
Chair recognizes you, ma'am.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mami Attar, and I live in by the Falls. I represent a community, an association, an owners association, which has more or less 3,000 people living. And I speak on their behalf, not only on mine. I know that Chairman Ferrer asked not to speak about anything else besides 60 or 70. I'm sorry, I still have to tell you that we don't favor nor the 60 nor the 70. We will favor nothing at all. We have enough as it is. Besides that, I want to read a letter from the State Senator Anitere Flores. Dear Chairman Ferrer, I am writing to you today on behalf of the many residents of Senate District 37 and their concern with the toll increases for State Road 836. I believe that our local economy, as well as many of my constituents who use State Road 836 to commute to work and school, will be impacted by this unreasonable toll increase. During a time that so many individuals are struggling financially, it is unfair to apply extensive toll increases to drivers. There is no question that this increase will disproportionately burden residents throughout Miami-Dade County and suppress economic growth in our local community. I respectfully request that you reevaluate this increase and take into consideration the enormous effect it will have to our residents. Sincerely, Anitere Flores, State Senator, District 37. Thank you.
Carlos Garcia and Libby Perez and Aurora Garcia has provided their time to Mr. Garcia.
So you have a total of 9 minutes. Maria Luisa, can you?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Board. First of all, I want to say thank you to all the Board and the staff for making the second meeting available. I know it was a lot to ask, but it's evidence that you're listening to the community, and I really sincerely want to thank all of you for allowing this. I represent rollback tolls. I'm no stranger here. I'm like the furniture. And what our group, in the last 3 years, we knew that something like this was coming. And in talking with Miller, my co-chair, I knew that this was coming, but I didn't know that it was going to be so aggressive. And that's what shocked me on October 2nd when I was here. I couldn't, my mouth almost hit the floor. So my points that I want to say, Maurice Ferrer, you say that the trees aren't relevant. Well, I think that they are. The expense of the trees is absolutely relevant. When you're at over 4% on landscaping on that highway, and I think that you can trim in certain areas of your expenses and budget to get the money that you need for these expansions, it's absolutely relevant. So I would not discount that. I think that there are a lot of areas that can be looked at, like Representative Fresson mentioned. I think that a lot of expenses can be looked at. I think I've looked at some of the expenses of the staff here. I know you're a very efficient organization, but I'm a businessman myself. I have employees. I have expenses and things like that, things that I consider on a weekly basis, and I'm always sharpening my pencil. And I think MDX can sharpen its pencil as well. I want to also say that, we have, listened, and the 60-cent option was a staff recommendation. And the 60-cent option is going to give you everything that you want to do on that project list, on that work program. I mean, in all honesty, I've looked at the work program. I know you guys have looked at the work program. The 60 cent was the original one, but the board opted for the 70 cent in an effort to get things done faster. But the 60 cents will give you everything that you need, and it will be, a little fairer with the public. It's still an increase, and, we have to remember that you did approve and you got the CPI indexing, okay? That's important because that's going to allow you in the future for additional automatic toll rate increases. You've got a lot of things that, that you can look at, and we're asking for the board to look at these expenses. We've got, some ideas that I've heard in the past, and I haven't heard too much talk about, is non-toll revenue. I've heard a lot of talk about non-toll revenue. For years, 3 years I've been hearing about non-toll revenue. For God's sakes, where is it? There's great ideas, that I've heard here, but where's the non-toll revenue program, to accommodate some of these projects that you need? I think that, the fact that you want to add on 2-year-old equipment, $10 million for 2-year-old equipment that you're in litigation with right now, I think is one thing that absolutely has to be chopped off the list. I think that the fact that if you keep it at 60 cents, you'll be able to capture more people. I think less people will avoid the road and will use the road at that lower rate, and you'll be able to subsequently catch more revenue. Our group has been very active in the community. As some of you know, we've got a petition, and we've got 3,000 signatures. It's 3,000 people that couldn't be here today that have signed this petition, okay? And in no way, I'm very proud of this petition. This petition, we've worked very hard on this petition. A lot of it has come organically, the signatures because of the media coverage on here, but there's 3,000 people. And it's representing all areas, and Mr. Holland had asked us in the last meeting to please represent some more areas of the public. Well, here they are. They're all over this county. They're all over West Palm Beach. They're in Broward, people that drive down. They're all over the, some of them are from other areas of the state, and I wanted to submit this to look at that. It's very important that you really take that into consideration. And also, I wanted to read my letter from my representative, Frank Artilis. We just received this letter today. Okay. And he is my representative. I'm going to take a minute to cue this up here. This is House of Representatives Frank Artilis, District 118. I am writing you today to express my concern over the proposed increase in tolls on State Road 836. As a member of the Florida House of Representatives Transportation Policy Committee and a member of the Transportation Economic Development Applications Committee, I uniquely understand the delicate nature of financing and maintaining roadways in our state, and I am concerned MDX's efforts thus far. Let's see. However, I am unable to support the motion to significantly raise tolls on a major commuter state road in our county at this time. Therefore, I respectfully request that you and the board members that propose toll increases on State Road 836 reconsider other possibilities moving forward. With the recent increase in tolls on the Florida Turnpike, which is also utilized by residents to commute, I am unable to support a toll increase on State Road 836. I appreciate your consideration. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or concerns. That's my state representative, Frank Artilis. And it's important, I know you're listening, and, we're just asking, please have some consideration. This agency is in the black. It's been in the black. It manages very well, and you'll manage very, very well with the 60 cents. You'll do excellent with the 60 cents. I realize this is about either a 60 or 70. It's still a toll rate increase at the end of the day. I'm not for it, but right now that's all that's before us, and I realize that. And I'm asking for you to be fair. I'm asking you to please, be fair with the public, and I'm asking you to please improve your communications. One point that I want to really drive home: I had a meeting with Carlos Jimenez on June 8th, at a Friday at 8:30 in the morning, and I sat before him and I mentioned to him the fact that the toll rate for non-SunPass users is going up 100%. The mayor of Miami-Dade County did not know that. He did not know that. Okay, that speaks to the gaping Grand Canyon in a lack of communication with the public. And I think that is the most, empirical proof that I can provide you that the communications of this agency has to improve. And I really would like the board to make that significant effort to improve communications. It's paramount. When you don't use the word increase in your communications, when you say, some drivers will pay the same, some will pay less, but everyone will pay their fair share, it's missing one very important component, that thousands will pay more. It doesn't say that thousands will pay more. I'm in advertising. If you're going to advertise, if you're going to communicate directly. And that's what I'm asking. Our group is here. We've been working very hard. I'm an activist. I'm not paid in any way, shape, or form. I'm just doing this because I'm concerned, and I'm concerned for my kids, that I want them to be able to grow up here. And I'm concerned because I'm going to be paying the toll bill for 3 little girls, in about 10 years. So the thing about it is that, it does affect me tremendously, and I think that we have a lot of representation here from different areas of the county, and I want everyone to, I want to thank everyone, all the representatives that have stepped up and come out here today, and, that's all we're asking, please listen to us, please. I'm coming to you asking kindly, please listen to us and have some consideration, for families, for businesses. There's business people here that are going to speak today. They're going to be impacted by this tremendously. And I want to thank you for the time and the opportunity to speak with you today. And again, thank you for all the work and hard effort you put into this community. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia, on behalf of all of us, let me tell you that we are very grateful, all of us, for the amount of time and the effort that you put into representing your constituents. And I think that 3,000 signatures is impressive, and I commend you for the dedication. There is one thing that I think on the record I need to correct. We gave to Mayor Carlos Jimenez on February of 2013, everything is being done that was passed on March 19th. So for him to say that he didn't know, the executive directors and others have gone directly to him and discussed, and he knows to the very specifics of what we're doing. So I just wanted to, on the record, correct that. I don't want to get into a discussion about it.
Right. But I have one other witness who was with me.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Mr. Barry White, and then Jane Walker. And then Michael Rosenberg.
Good afternoon. Congratulations to the newly elected members of the board. And thank you for reconsidering this matter. What we're really talking about here is a matter of timing. We all want to see the build-out of MDX, the whole system, and it's essential so that BRT can function. As I understand it, the buses have to be able to move in traffic 55, 60 miles an hour because dedicated lanes are not going to happen. So that's the goal. The question really is, how fast can you get there, and how much of a burden can you impose on the traveling public to get there at what rate? You're going to get there eventually. 60, 70, it really, all of these projects are going to be realized. It's just a question of how fast. And what you're really being asked today is to slow down a little bit. Think about the timing of what you're doing. The build-out of 874, 878, as we know, resulted in a 14% increase in usage. Well, you don't know what's going to happen on the road you're building now in terms of usage, how many people are going to be using it on, off. I would think you'd want to wait until you see what is going to happen before you really, you're going to set the 60 cent, or hopefully today, and that's done. But what you really need, from my standpoint, and my organization can't, is a different approach to this whole thing that's more transparent and more sensible. I said this 2 months ago at your meeting, and for whatever it's worth, I'll repeat it. It seems to me that your financing, your budgeting, should be budget-driven. At the beginning of the year, you decide what your budget is going to be, how much you're going to need to run the system, how much you're going to need for maintenance, how much you're going to need for growth. Once that's set, then the tolls would flow from that. We may wind up with lower tolls. If your usage increases because people are getting where they have to be faster, they're going to want to use your system. And you may get to a usage system where you're producing more revenue. I think you're over $112 million in the last quarter, was it? That's a lot of money. So if you're producing more revenue, that can, and you can count on that, that can fold back into the system. You may wind up being able to reduce tolls or adjust tolls annually or more frequently downward based on usage, because you're going to wind up with a closed system. And as you close the system, then you can more intelligently decide, instead of saying we need to build this road, we need so much in bonds. That's not really creative thinking. It doesn't seem to me a rational approach to such a large system.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you so much. Please, 60 cents today. You got plenty of time in the future to worry about it. Thank you.
Mr. White, thank you for very intelligent statements, and I thank you for your input.
Jane Walker, Michael Rosenberg, Lawrence Percival.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm also taking the time from this gentleman here sitting next to Mayor McDougall, Mark Goodrich.
We need his name for the record. Okay.
Thank you very much for
So
having this.
You have 6 minutes then, right?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jane Walker. Thank you very much for having this, this hearing today. I greatly appreciate the gesture, and I greatly appreciate the fact that you are listening. It is a good day when the public speaks and government listens. I'm going to truncate my speech because a lot of points have been made, but I do want to speak to a couple of things. Those 3,079 signatures that we got, I want you to understand how we got those. The petition was out on a website for several months, and the numbers grew organically. When we would go to community groups and speak, when Carlos Garcia was on the radio or on television, when we were handing out flyers and traffic and in shopping centers and the many, many places that we went. We really wore the shoe soles off of our shoes. And so if you look at the record of the petitions, you'll see that they trickled in sometimes when there was not a lot going on in the press, and then we would have press days where we would get 100 or 200 a day. We're very proud of those, and for anyone who is going to watch this recording, I'm speaking to them. We hear you, Miami-Dade County, and we're here today representing you. And thank you for signing the petition and for paying attention and taking the time to read the information out there and visit the MDX website as well. I also want to say that we did this with no money. So I'm very proud of that. MDX spent, I believe it was something like between $70,000 and $80,000, I don't want to misspeak, to get 123 people to a meeting or something like that. It was close to those numbers. We got thousands for no money. And speaking in earnest, and also trying to tell people tolls are not going to go away, but certainly we need to pay attention to how the money is being spent. So we're proud of that, and I thank those 3,079 people. We still have letters coming in. You probably haven't seen the Representative Artilia's letter. You haven't seen Linda Bell's letter. I got that just a little bit ago. I'm going to try to read it, but it's in a small font. I also want to thank the elected officials that are here. You have a motto that says, let's move forward together. Well, literally, we have a little piece of Tallahassee who came to roost in your building. How wonderful is that? Because if they were in session, we wouldn't have been able to get their time to do this. So the timing of this was wonderful. We met with them, we called them, we caught them at public meetings, we had mindful, thoughtful conversations with them, and you can see that these are a very intelligent group of people, and they came at this from different perspectives, as evidenced by some of the comments today. I would like to personally acknowledge my representative, Jeanette Nunez, who wrote a letter without my requesting. How awesome is that? I found out about it after she wrote the letter, and then, of course, what we did was we started rolling that letter out to everybody else. And then we get another letter, and then we'd have 2 letters, and we'd roll those out. We have 2 letters. Are you going to write a letter too? Can we come and talk to you now that you're back from session? We were very excited about that. So we really take you at your word when you say, let's move forward together, because Together showed up today to talk to you and have a dialogue. There's going to be an upside and a downside to that. They're going to get to see the great things you're doing, and they're going to get to see the things that you could do better. But you are like a teenager. You're 16 years old, so you're still evolving. And so now is the time to take an introspective look at how you're doing, what you're doing, and how you can make your organization durable for the future. But I am here to ask you today to prioritize your spending, trim your budgets, minimize your debt, keep user fees as low as possible, take very seriously that third option of 5 options, which was the staff recommended option of 60 cents. 70 cents was the most expensive option, and I think we've made reference to the fact that there are other toll rate mechanisms that you have that are going to be kicking in, and I'm quite frankly not happy about them and very concerned, but today I'm here to ask you for that 60-cent option to consider that. I think there would be tremendous goodwill that could be sown as a result of that. I have a letter here from the mayor of the city of Miami Beach. Now, in it, she's talking a lot about 112, and I'm not going to read the letter, but I'm assuming that you all received a copy. I'll try to be relevant to what we're voting on today. But the first thing I want to say to you is that she was in Europe, but I met her at the Transit Summit for the first time, and she came up to me and said, I'm going to write you a letter. And she made sure that that happened when she was in Europe. So I want to acknowledge the fact that she is really watching what's going on in this community like a hawk. And I invite you to read her remarks. It's a lovely letter. I'm not going to read the letter today. I think I'm running close to time, so I'm just going to pick a few.
Excuse me for interrupting. That letter and the other letters that you mentioned are all part of the record.
Oh, good. I'm glad that you have them. All right. And so you have, I'm assuming, also seen the Linda Bell letter because that came in very late. If you will allow me to run a little bit over, I'm speaking for her, not me. You have it? You have, okay. So, and I think there are other letters that yet have not been read today, but I am very grateful to the mayors, the representatives, the state senator, Aneteri Flores, and to the commissioners who have weighed in on this. And of course, I thank you for the work that you do. I see that you work very hard. That's something I've learned in the last 4 or 5 months, is just how hard you work to be on this board. Thank you for your consideration.
Yes.
In the interest of just understanding, could someone share with us the wording of the petition that generated the 3,000 signatures? Because I have not been.
I am very sad that you've not seen that.
I've not seen it. So
well, it's been out there for half a year. How come? We've been tweeting it and Facebooking it.
The reason that some people didn't see the advertising in the paper, but I would love to understand, if you don't mind, I would love to understand the wording of that
Do you have
petition.
a copy of it so that
we can. It's on the website. It's on the Rollback Tolls website.
All right, well,
if you click the red button, it'll take you right to the petition.
Maria Luisa, can you get someone to print it up for us, please?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, next speaker.
Michael Rosenberg, and our last speaker, Lawrence Percival.
What? Mr. Rosenberg, the chair recognizes you.
Hi, Michael Rosenberg, 13030 North Calusa Club Drive, Miami, Florida. I feel a little bit like Paul Revere that warned everyone the British is coming, the British are coming. As president of the Kendall Federation of Homeowner Associations, we're an advocate for about 400,000 people in Kendall that seem to call us when they have issues. And I've never been called on so many things in my life. I think there's more than 400,000 people. I just wanted to share with you that people have called and they've asked, what can we do about this? Can we vote these people out of office if we don't like this increase? Nope, you can't do that. Can we go to the polls and vote if we want to pay for an increase or we want some other way to fund the roads? Nope, you can't do that either. So what can you do? it's what people are doing. They're getting mad. And I don't envy your position right now. If you remember when Mayor Alvarez raised our property taxes a lot. My property tax went up almost $800 or $900 a year. It took a little while for it to sink in what had happened. And the people did something historically never done in this whole country. They recalled the mayor by almost 90%. And think about, again, I don't envy your position. Imagine on your table in front of you a glass of water. A glass of water represents the tolls that we pay now. You are in the unfortunate decision of deciding how many drops of cyanide you want to put in that water, 60 drops or 70 drops. Either way, it's not good. And the people are going to be mad, and they're going to be watching. And I don't envy your position. The Kendall Federation has said, don't raise the tolls. People in Kendall, and West Kendall, East Kendall, pay enough. Well, you'll make that decision today, and the people will respond to your decision. That's how it works. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. Mr. Percival, good to see you again, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, board members, and Executive Director. It's been a while since I've spoken before you. So today I am the president of the Greater Kendall Community Activists, but I'm going to speak for one person today, Lawrence Percival, retired U.S. Army. If the popular vote is all that matters, then the decision's already been made. 60 cents it'll be. But I think there are things that need to be said that helps people in the audience who may not know all the facts. The leveraging that extra 10 cents gives you, time is money. And that extra leveraging, I don't know how much that relates to in dollars, but perhaps somebody would tell the audience how much more that gives you in the ability to sell bonds, to build the roads sooner. One thing I do know from your executive director who told me this is that if 60 cents is approved instead of 70 cents, then the interchange at Southwest 87th Avenue and the Dolphin Expressway will not be built until later. The improvements on Gratney Road will not be built until later. There are other things that may be impacted by the difference between the 10 cents that people will pay and 10 cents that people won't pay. In a perfect world, I would like to see that you generate your money in a closed system based on everybody who gets on and everybody gets off pays, from wherever they get on to wherever they get off. But that's not the way it is now, but eventually it will be. And I'd like to see some other things as well, and I'm not going to, I don't see where the time being kept is, so I don't know where I am, but go ahead. I hope that some of the facts that need to be presented before you vote today will be communicated to the folks in the audience, the people that are listening on television, and everybody has a better picture of understanding. So it's not just about a popular vote of 2 million people saying we don't want it. Let's help people understand what it is that you're really doing for the county, for the people of Miami-Dade County, and what the impact is and the difference is. It's not just about, hey, we're not being represented here, we didn't vote for you to be here, you're not our representatives and we don't like what you're doing. It's not about that. I have always said that this is a very effective and a very efficient agency in terms of your road building. And I've always liked what you've done compared to other road building entities in the state of Florida, and I'll still stand by the fact that you're efficient and effective. What I also would like to be able to see, though, is a rebate program for frequent travelers of your system. And that plan is still evolving. It's a work in progress. It hasn't been finished yet, as I understand. And that should make the difference. In a perfect world, again, if you were to go with 70 cents as opposed to 60 cents, perhaps you would be able to take a dedicated fund of money and set it aside towards that rebate program. But if you're only going to go with 60 cents, it precludes you from being able to do something like that. So hopefully you'll consider all of these things as a part of your deliberations today and not just be caught up on the whirlwind of public opinion that says, we want you to do it or else. That's the veiled threat that you've been hearing today, and I hope it just doesn't come down to a veiled threat. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Percival, for your very insightful comments. Are there any other public speakers that have registered? So now, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'm willing to second, but I'd like to ask one more time, is there anyone in the public that has not yet spoken that wishes to be heard? Hearing that no other member of the community wishes to be heard, I'll second the motion to close.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion on closing the public hearing? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anybody opposed? So the public hearing is now closed. Now, normally, ladies and gentlemen, we would now take a 5-minute break, which is much needed. But unfortunately, one of our members has to catch an airplane, and in the interest of permitting him the opportunity to vote, you have time for a break. All right. So can you promise me you'll keep it to 5 minutes? All right. We'll take a 5-minute break, and we will start at 5:45. I'm going to recognize you in a moment. No, you're going to get recognized in a second. Please take your seats. We're about to begin. We're on a little bit of a time. All right. Here's the way this is going to go now. I'm going to recognize the maker of the motion to make a motion, and the seconder of the motion to second the motion for purposes of discussion. Okay. Once that motion is on the floor, then I will ask the executive director for his comments on all the presentation that we've heard. I've made 12 notes on main points that have been made. Obviously, I've eliminated the repetitions. And then we have Mr. Ed Regan, who is here from the CDM Smith Corporation, which is a very large, important, and highly recommended and recognized entity that does traffic reports not only for MDX but for the state of Florida and for everybody else in the nation, to answer some of the questions of the things that have been brought, and then I will open it up for discussion. Okay, so at this time I will recognize Ms. Smith-Fano to make her motion.
Thank you, Chair Ferre. I move the adoption of Resolution 1308 relating to the modification of open road tolling rate for the Mainline 836, which has been distributed as part of our board package.
Okay. This is for the purposes of discussion, so that there's no confusion as to what we're doing, okay? Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been seconded. All those in favor of opening this is up for discussion, say aye. Is anybody opposed? All right, we are now open for discussion. Now, I'm sorry?
I was making.
All right, I will recognize you then to explain your motion. And Maritza, if you want to make a statement at this time, that's fine. And then I'm going to go to the executive director. Go ahead. Shelley, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry also. This was a motion to move the adoption of this resolution, which would lower our current toll rate, which was approved on March 19th, of 70 cents to 60 cents. I'm doing this in light of the fact that with the full implementation of open road tolling, closing of the system, the MDX revenues will increase due to the higher tolls in some areas. We will have tolling where there wasn't tolling before, and the doubling of the tolls for the toll by plate. So that will increase revenue for MDX. I would also like to take this opportunity, if I may, to thank everyone, all the citizens that came, our government officials that not only wrote the letters, but came and gave us their valuable time. Thank you.
All right, after the discussion, Ms. Smith-Fano, I will recognize you to make the motions for a vote, okay, at the proper time. Would the seconder of the motion like to say anything at this time?
Sure. Yes, I would. I also like to add a heartfelt thank you for the community and those that sent the letters and the public officials that came out. It really demonstrated today what democracy is all about. Having two voices, even though decision makers may be thinking one way, you get to listen to how the other side is really going to be affected. And that's where the delicate balance comes in today as we cast our vote. I want us to be remembered. This has been a journey that started a long time ago in going ORT. And as we go ORT, we realize there are new capture monies that are realized into the MDX budget. We don't know what our backbone, it doesn't matter how much the officials will forecast and tell us how much they think it's going to generate. We will only know what we know after it's done. And as we close 836 in both directions, there will be new tolling areas in those two directions, which means that new monies will be captured, even without a toll increase. This is where 10 cents makes a big difference. It's $124 million. That's the difference between 10 cents of 60 to 70. There's a big difference. You know, we hear, oh, it's only 10 cents. Well, 10 cents means 180 or 210 going in every direction, direction east or direction west. Today I asked the board to consider this and reflect this way. When I was chair in 2009, there was a resolution that was made because we knew that we were going to electronic tolling. And on those three expressways, and when I'm referring to those three expressways of 924, 874, and 878, we did a resolution that the majority of the members are still here today and voted for it. And they voted to hold the line on those toll increases until such time we had realized ORT and we knew what this electronic collection would do. I ask you today to also extend the same courtesy to all those users of 836 going in either direction and hold the line with the courtesy. And I'm only asking for even one portion of what that resolution called for. Hold the line on increasing the toll. Go back, decrease it to 60 cents, not 70 cents. That resolution I have here today, and announced to me when we voted on the new toll rate policy, this was actually, you can call it abolish, delete it. It dropped off the table, off the face of the map, but it was something that the wisdom of this board and those in power, Mayor Ferre, you were on that board. You voted in favor of this. Warman, you were on the board. You voted in favor of this. So were you, Mr. Martinez. And by the way, former Treasurer Sanabria, you also voted on this. Today I ask you, Pego, Secretary, I won't spare you. You were on the board and you voted for this too. I ask you today, reconsider and do the same thing for those users of 836 and 112 on both directions. Provide that same courtesy that we did to the other three expressways. Only until such time you will realize what actually ORT will realize. It's not about losing $124 million. It's about what you are capturing, what you will be able to do. Go back to your budget. Go back and look at what other jobs can you drop that it won't be missed. And I can tell you, maybe you won't be able to reach to that number, but at least align ourselves and do the same thing that we did for the other three expressway. By the way, Board Member Holland, you too were on that board with me, and you were my vice chair. So I ask you today, please, board, reconsider. Thank you.
All right. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to recognize the executive director to make any comments that he, on behalf of the administration, have on the testimony that was made. Then I'm going to ask Mr. Ed Regan, is he still here?
He's here.
Yeah, okay, to come and ask and inform us, and I will be asking him some specific questions on things that were discussed. So, Mr. Executive, and I will hold my comments until the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we begin, point of order, are you going to allow for different board members to comment?
Of course.
I knew the answer to that question, so I wanted to make sure.
I see. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, in the spirit of time, I'm going to keep my remarks very short because we have made a presentation on the plan, whether it was 70 cents or 60 cents, and it's been thoroughly discussed, the pros and cons, or the impacts one way or the other. So that's been discussed.
Excuse me, Mr. Director.
Sure.
I really think that since several members of this board have asked for a review of this, I really think that you really, and I apologize for contradicting you, but I think it's important that you address some of the basic issues that have been requested here. I think you have to.
Getting there.
Yeah, okay.
I was getting there. Based on that, I'm going to stick to the basic issues that have been requested. And I think the first one that I need to address is very clear, is staff recommendation. In October of 2012, we held a State Road 836 and State Road 112 rate setting workshop. And it was open to the public. The board was presented with 5 options. Those options ranged from 60 cents to 75 cents, not 70, which was the highest. 75 was the highest. We explained what the additional bonding revenue would be, what projects could be funded, and our recommendation was based on building a work program as traditional. During the deliberation of that meeting, a couple of issues came out. Number one, the board instructed staff not to build the projects on 836 in pieces because it was going to cost more, it was going to take longer. What can we do to advance those projects? And number two, that we needed to build our budget to a 1.5 coverage, not the 1.4 policy that was adopted by the board. 1.5 debt service coverage was the optimal rate. Based on those two options, the board decided to move out with 65 and 70, and that's as far as staff recommendation went. We went out and had the presentations for 65 and 70. We've had the recommendations for 60 in the last month. As far as comments of informing elected officials, we met with every MPO member. We met with every elected official and discussed it. Doesn't mean they agreed with us. We informed them. We have booklets that we left behind that specifically stated everything that was going to happen and when it was going to happen. And for the record, the toll rate adjustment or any new rates on 836 don't take effect till August of 2014. And the CPI doesn't take effect until fiscal year 2017. And at that point, per policy, the board can defer it. No different than the Florida legislature afforded the Florida Turnpike to defer it over 5 years. Here's my point to the board. When I hear that what we're doing is going to slow economic growth, or that what we're doing is going to push people away and we're not going to grow as a community, I'll go back in time. We are a teenager, Ms. Walker, and I agree we are a teenager, 16 years. When the agency was founded, the level of service and the traffic congestion on 836 was horrendous. And I lived here and I remembered. Traffic used to back up in both directions based on the toll plaza that existed at 17th Avenue or the connection that we had out at the Turnpike. It would back up all the way to the Palmetto, and in some instances all the way to Lejeune, going eastbound into downtown. This agency, and I've done these analysis way before we did ORT, Madam Chair, and I'll call you Madam Chair, I'll continue, Madam Chair. These analyses have all been done. If we were a private agency, what would we have done? The first thing we would have done was toll the entire facility because we have an open system. We survived many of those years as a teenager and as a toddler and so on. basically collecting from 25, 30%, 40% of the customers. The other were going free. So the entire system supported the development and the implementation of a lot of the projects that are the foundation of what we have today. In that span of time, the county has grown. The airport and seaport have seen tremendous increases, and traffic flow on 836 has improved. We're no longer in the top 10 most congested areas. With that said, there is a portion of 836, and this is common knowledge, between 57th Avenue and Lejeune Road, which is considered one of the most congested corridors in the country. And it is that particular area and areas east of that this funding, whether it's 60 or 70, is going to be applied to.
There's a big difference.
There's a $110 million difference between the rates. But there's a bigger issue as well. The difference between 60 and 70 cents, and we had the conversation at Budget and Finance, is also the overall health of the agency from a financial standpoint. I hear all the times that we are a toll and spend, and we get into debt. And I read the letters, and I pay attention to the letters very clearly, very carefully. We just took action to defease bonds. We just took action to refinance our bonds. The goal of the agency, since we are not subsidized by anyone, I haven't seen the state of Florida offer MDX any free money, or Miami-Dade County, or the federal government. Since we have to live within our means, we have to make sure that whatever project we propose, number one, is consistent with the county's plans, otherwise we cannot build them. So we have to be consistent with long-range transportation plan and the comprehensive development master plan. We don't come up with projects out of the air. Number two, that we can operate and maintain them. From my perspective, sustainability, and I'm a big fan of sustainability, has to include financial sustainability. So yes, I understand that there's folks that don't like some of the expenditures. I understand that the landscaping could have been 1.5 instead of 4%. There was commitments that we made, and we followed through on them, period. Now, as far as our expenses, and as far as where we can cut our expenses, for 6 years, and these expenses and these budgets are posted every year on our website, and they're open to viewing, every category, except for SunPass charges, was reduced. We actually have a graph that shows our operating costs going down. In fact, some of the biggest contracts, and Ms. Gutierrez will remember, our asset maintenance contract, when it was up for renewal, it didn't matter what our estimate was. It didn't matter that the contractor won fair and square. The comment was made to me, we don't want to pay more than this amount, which is what we have in our budget. Go back and give them an option, and you got till December 23rd. And I remember that vividly because it was the easiest negotiation I ever had to do. So we have reduced our costs. We were fortunate this year that Florida's Turnpike worked with us to reduce some of the SunPass charges. And because of that, we're seeing some of our operating costs go down this year, and I'm grateful to the Florida Department of Transportation for that. Aside from that, Mr. Chair, this notion that we don't analyze what the effects are going to be, the folks like, Marie Schaefer, Randy Topol, who are financial advisors, our underwriters, Ed Regan, who's expert in traffic and revenue, when we sell bonds, when we go and ask the investment community to loan us money to build a project, we can't do it on a whim, and we can't do it based on just, this is our thought and our hope. We have scientific analyses, models that are based on a lot of inputs. And history says we're very, very close annually, quarterly, to those projections. We know what the projections are, and we stand by those projections, and I have to stand by them when we go before the rating agencies and the investment community to defend what we want to borrow. This is a policy discussion right now, and I understand it, and the staff, as I've said publicly and privately, we will execute the will of this board. Regardless, my opinion personally doesn't really matter. And with that, I close, and I will answer questions.
Your opinion doesn't matter, but your opinion is a very important opinion for this board because you are the professional who we look upon to guide us in the day-to-day operations, and we've been hearing a lot of very serious discussion on our financial health and where we're going. At this time, I would like to recognize Mr. Ed Regan. And Mr. Regan, you've heard a lot of statements that were made about using numbers, and that's your specialty. So why don't you give us a very quick, and if you can keep it to 5 or 6 minutes, that would be great.
I think it'll be less than that, but I'd like to really try to entertain your questions
Yeah.
rather than make a speech here. The one kind of editorial comment I'll make is that you do need to realize that the importance of this road. 836 is probably one of the most important arteries in all of the county, for sure. Most of the growth in this county is happening to the south and the southwest, but because we don't have I-95 running down the US 1 corridor, and because US 1 itself is heavily congested and heavily signalized, then most of that growth that's happening in the south and west uses a variety of means to get there, but a funnel is created on 836 just south of Miami Airport, between the Palmetto and Lejeune. And that carries over 200,000 vehicles a day. There are no other east-west expressways, limited access facilities in the entire county to serve that growing population until you get as far north as all the way through to I-95 until you
And
get as
in
far
your
north
considered opinion,
as Palmetto.
in your considered opinion, what is the effect if we don't relieve that funnel for the economic health and well-being of this community?
It's obviously very negative. I mean, I think that one of the things that I don't know, I don't have the analytical results to share with you today, but among the many things that you should consider in this decision is also, as a matter of public policy, of whether drivers are better off paying slightly lower rates, but getting worse operating conditions or more delay, let's say, in that one bottleneck location.
That's what's being requested.
I mean, if people were actually asked the question, would you like to pay $2 or $2.25 or something, $2.10, I guess is the exact amount in question, to have your trip be 15 minutes, or would you rather pay $1.80 for your trip to be 22 minutes, or whatever the right numbers are? I'm kind of making up the numbers here. I think you might get a different answer to that question. So I just want to make that point. The importance is very critical, and that critical link is going to become even more of a bottleneck in the future. I know under either one of these options you have improvements planned there, but there is a finite practical limit to how wide you can get that section. And so ultimately, to some extent, pricing is going to be needed as a demand management tool in there at some point in time. Just a few little tidbits here. I've been asked before what the potential traffic impacts are, first, of closing the system in the first place. In that system now, there's a very high percentage of toll-free usage, where people don't pay any tolls on 836. The volume in that critical section would probably, we estimate, will drop by about 20%, which should in itself relieve some of the congestion, but it'll obviously push some traffic to alternative routes, widespread all the way from Route 1 all the way up to just north of the airport.
Will that 20% drop, will that remain for years? Or
well, in relative terms, because it'll eventually evaporate. There's some latent demand there too, but it'll eventually evaporate as traffic grows. But it'll probably always be a little bit less than it would be.
And in your projections, you take that into account.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the financial projections assume that loss of traffic. Another issue, and overall, by the way, the movement from the existing toll system to the entire, at the 60-cent level, to the entire conversion to ORT, closing the system, adding the gantries at the $1.80 or the $2.10 full trip, including the extension, will reduce total traffic on the overall road by about 14%, going from, which includes a lot of free traffic that's not paying anything today. Moving from 60 to 70 cents would actually reduce traffic by about another 6%. So the difference we're talking about is about an 18% difference in prices and about a 6% difference in traffic. The number of tolling points the average trip goes through under the new configuration is just over 1.5 per trip, and the average difference here, focusing on just the difference between 60 and 70 cents, the average difference per trip would be about 17.9 cents per direction, which translates into 36 cents, I guess, or so, 35 cents a day If you make the average trip and you make it every day, it's about $7.50 a month, $90 a year. So what we're really debating here is less than $8 a month in terms of the actual prices. And in terms of comparative toll rates, in terms of per mile rates, at 16 cents.
Comparative, in other words, MDX is proposed at 70 cents or 60 cents as compared to?
To both your other facilities in Florida, and other facilities nationally.
Tampa, for example?
Yeah. At 60 cents, the full-length trip would be around 15 cents a mile. At 70 cents, it'd be around 17.1 cents a mile. Today, it's around 10 cents a mile with all the free movements and so forth that are in there.
Tampa and Orlando and other places.
Well, first of all, just on your other facilities, 874 now is running 15 to 16 cents, depending on which leg you use, if you use Snapper Creek or whatever. 112 112's not been converted yet. 924 is running about 19 cents a mile with the current rates, the post-ORT rates. In Tampa, Veterans Expressway is 12 to 13 cents a mile. Orlando East-West Expressway, the most heavily used one in Orlando, is 17 cents a mile, as is the Leroy Selman Expressway also in Tampa area. Of other facilities, E470 in Denver is about 27 cents a mile. Two major facilities in Southern California range from 27 to 36 cents a mile. Powhite Parkway in Richmond, Virginia is 21. Dulles Toll Road's 20. Dallas North Tollway is 15. Triangle Expressway, another AET facility recently opened in an area where they haven't had tolls in Raleigh, North Carolina, is about 17 cents a mile, and that's actually came in considerably above our forecast. So I picked out about 12 or 13 facilities outside of the MDX facilities, and they came out with an average of just about 19 cents a mile. So the toll facilities in the urban areas in this country average around, in the larger urban areas, there's certainly exceptions. Illinois Tollway still is like 7 cents a mile, but they average around 19 cents a mile today. A few of those facilities have reduced rates in off-peak hours, which is something you may want to consider in the future. I know that's not for action today. So what you're talking about is between 15 and 17, basically, as compared to 19 as an industry average, just to give you a benchmark. We talk about, by the way, a typical trip end-to-end. That represents probably no more than 15% of your total traffic. There's a lot of short trips. There's many, many trips, actually. I mean, there's twice as many trips moving just between Palmetto and Lejeune, which are totally free, as there are to go end-to-end on the entire 836. So unfortunately, because of that bottleneck location, 836 has actually become, in essence, an arterial, a major arterial for local travel as opposed to a longer expressway for commuting movements. The trip times, what's the value of using SR 836? For a full-length trip, or at least this was from from the Turnpike to I-95, didn't include the extension for some reason when they did this for me. On 836, the typical trip in peak periods takes around 21, 22 minutes, and off-peak it's around 13 minutes. That's the cost of the congestion that's there. The alternative routes in peak hours are around 41, 42 minutes if you took local streets, versus about 30 minutes in off-peak hours, because you still, even though you don't have as much congestion, you still have all the traffic signals and things. What that basically says is that by using SR 836 for a full trip, your drivers will save about 20 minutes in peak hours and about 15 minutes in off-peak hours. At 20 cents a minute, that's worth $4 and $3 respectively, and then plus there's additional gas savings. So the value that a driver goes from the Turnpike to I-95 on SR 836 receives by using that road as compared to alternative streets, and I'm not saying this is a criteria, I'm just giving you this background information, is about $4.70 in peak hours and about $3.80 in off-peak. And even with the 70-cent rate for that particular part of the movement, what you're talking about charging people is $2.10 at both times of those days. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Regan. I'm now going to open it up for discussion, and I think...
the Chairman, I have a couple questions,
absolutely.
Mr. Reagan. One of the questions that I have is, we got off the most congested list. Is that correct?
Yes.
got off the top 10. We're not in the top 10 anymore. We're like 15, if I'm not
But that's
mistaken.
the region, right?
That's
That's
for the
not
right
just
for
the
the region.
What
We
are
have a
you-
segment. We have a segment that's in the top 5, actually.
Okay, the segment is top 5 is the one.
The one between 57th Avenue and
Okay,
Lejeune.
now, maybe, Mr. Executive Director, what are the plans for that segment under the approved 70-cent rate?
The improvements are contained in Project 83628. They involve the modification of interchange at 57th Avenue. It involves the modification of the interchange at Lejeune Road that currently has a left-hand entrance into the airport.
Which is 42nd.
Which is 42nd Avenue. And it also includes adding a lane in each direction.
Okay, Mr. Reagan, the average trip that you analyze is for a daily commuter is less than 2 toll stations, is that correct?
Yeah, it's about 17 cents, so it's 1.7 toll stations, the difference, I'm saying.
So basically, the bulk of our commuters take 1 or 2 gantries. They go
Correct,
through 1 or
correct.
2 gantries. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. The only 15% of our commuters take the full route. Is that correct?
Yeah, that might be a little bit speculative, only because the way it was run, it excluded traffic on the extension going all the way through. But I'd certainly say less than 20% go end to end. And there's more than 25,000 trips that just use the free section between Lejeune and
What has been the time savings of the projects that we have instituted so far, could institute for the commuter? You said $4.70. Is that under the current situation or on the future projection?
No, that's the value they get. Oh, you mean in terms of the time
Yeah.
savings? No, I think the benefits will be greater after the widening is completed, because the 20-minute trip time on, or 21-minute trip time on 836 today will probably be reduced at least by 3 or 4 minutes in peak periods.
I don't think we have ever measured our carbon emissions from vehicle traffic, have we, as an index?
No, and I haven't either, so I hope you're not going to ask me that question.
All right.
No, but I will say that you'll probably reduce fuel consumption. You'll save about, every trip will save, by using the toll road versus the alternative routes, will save about 0.2 of a gallon of gas, which sounds like a trivial amount, but if you multiply it by 300,000 users a day on this road, on different sections of the road or so forth, then that's a fairly significant amount. And there's a direct one-to-one correlation between reduced fuel consumption and reduced greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay. If you have other questions, I'll come back to you. Next is Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you.
And then Ms. Gutierrez.
Mr. Director, I have a couple of questions. Can you explain to us exactly what project and what benefits we're going to lose if we go from 70 cents to 60 cents?
That's the key question.
Yes. Yes. The projects that would not be included in the 60-cent proposal, as was stated by someone in the public, the interchange at 87th Avenue and 836, which was requested by the Freight Transportation Committee of the MPO. We wouldn't be able to do that. There's a phase 2 and 3 of 83611, which is the interchange at I-95 and 836, that wouldn't be included. There wouldn't be the extension of the Gratney west to the Turnpike, which the PD&E is ongoing and it's about to complete, so that would be ready to extend out to the Turnpike. And then there's a major study of Connect 4 that wouldn't be included in the 70 cents.
Now, the part of...
Yeah, and ORT, which, by the way, for clarification of the board, because we took it to the MPO and I had to clarify it at the MPO, the modifications or the upgrades to the ORT system, and this is for clarification and to the audience as well, those improvements are included in their contract. We're terminating their contract. We're procuring the contract again. That system would depreciate, and it was included into the terms and conditions of their existing contract. When we took it to the MPO and we put it in this plan, we considered it a transportation improvement. It is not. It's a replacement and renewal function, because it's not a capacity project. There is a system there already. So it was classified incorrectly. It should be an R&R or something, or it should be an R&R rather than a TIP item. So that's just for clarification. But that addresses your...
So this project on 836 and 95, that would help alleviate the congestion that I go through every single day. When you have to stand in 95 coming into 12th Avenue, and there are 3 accidents happening because somebody went from one side to the other, is that what it's meant to alleviate?
That's right. Mr. Gonzalez, the eastbound portion would be funded on either scenario, and that's phase 1. That's the ramp from 12th Avenue to northbound 95. The components that wouldn't be funded are the westbound components that tie into the I-395 improvements coming off of I-395.
Right, but every afternoon when I'm going west, okay, you have 2 or 3 accidents there, and every Friday now, I get to stand almost in Northeast 2nd and wait my turn to go up that ramp as people are exiting into 12th Avenue, and there's no way to pass.
We know.
So that's one of the things that would be improved, right, by project.
Phase 2 and 3, which is the westbound improvements, are not funded with 60 cents. They're only funded with the 70 cents. The eastbound improvements are funded with the 60 cents.
I have one more.
East, not the west.
Right.
Correct.
Right. Now, one more question, and that is, it's a great concern to me as a member of this board to make sure that our debt service is always at a level that our bond holders are not going to come back to us with penalties and extra payments and things that we may not be able to afford. So when we say we're going from 70 cents to 60 cents, an $8 a month hit on people, as I hear it. Average. Okay? Tell me, what does that do to my debt service and my exposure to my bondholders?
There's two consequences. One is, as was discussed at Budget and Finance, and Marie and the finance folks can expand on this in detail, but just in basic concepts, our financing plan, because we delayed the implementation of this ORT, we stressed it. So we back-ended a lot of the debt. So in essence, right now we're paying interest only, like on a loan, and we have principal payments in the back. So our financing plan is very unbalanced right now. It's back-ended. And we did that purposely because that's what we can afford, and we had to have cash on hand to be able to meet certain debt service coverages. With a 70-cent rate, what it affords us to do when we go out to the market again is to, number one, defease some of our variable debt instruments, and that conversation occurred before, and Marie and her team can define that. But it also affords us the ability to level out our debt over the 30-year period. That level debt affords us lower interest payments over the time period. It allows us capacity to have more capacity for pay-as-you-go. We don't want to have to borrow money for every project we do. There are certain projects that we have in the past. If there was cash on hand that had to be committed to some bucket because of some criteria to meet bond covenants or debt service covenant, we would take that cash and fund a project. And that's like paying down your mortgage up front and financing a lower amount. That is the debt management plan that was presented to you. Those are the types of options that we want to discuss with the board, where, of course, we don't want to get into a heck of a lot more debt over the period of time. We want to manage our debt and provide the value to the community that's necessary.
Just have one more question, and that is, if we go to 60 from 70, we're going to lose the ability to bond out projects at about $100 million.
Correct.
Okay? Interest rates are at an all-time low right now. If we wait, if we do the timing issue that we've been asked to do, and we're considering here, have we looked at what the cost of that would be if interest rates go to a reasonable amount of 6.5% or 7%?
I would ask the financial folks, because I'm not an expert in predicting how interest rates are going to go up and down on a weekly or monthly basis.
Randy Topol with First Southwest. We looked at the debt structure using the 70 cents and the 60 cents. And the coverage levels, based on the assumptions that we used, we were able to achieve the 1.5 coverage at the 70 cents. At the 60 cents, the coverages dropped into the high 1.38s to low 1.4 range in the early years. So we then looked at reducing the debt, and it wasn't just reducing the debt. We had to also kind of reshape the debt. We were able to minimize the amount that we took out to only $110 million by doing interest only during the construction period. Now, this is a two-stage project because every capital plan has a pay-as-you-go portion, which comes from your coverage. The coverage sounds like it's a bad thing. It actually is putting money to reduce your capital program on an ongoing basis. It is never wasted. It goes through that, and it reduces your R&R cost, or it reduces your capital program cost. That's the first thing. The second thing is we have to do something called capitalized interest when we're doing a lower toll rate. And capitalized interest is essentially funding the interest costs with bond proceeds. And this is issuing debt to pay debt. It's not something that geo credits will do because they'll only issue the amount of debt that their revenues will support. Most water and sewer departments don't issue capitalized interest because they look at the existing rate bases. But with infrastructure projects like this, where we can't recognize any revenues, we have to look at the existing system. And sometimes when we're talking about this large a program, we'll have to sell capitalized interest. Going from the 70 to 60, we had to sell another 60 million to capitalized interest. It's not something that's horrible. It's been done in the past. All major infrastructures do it. It's not something that you want to do, but it's something that was there.
All right, thank
You're
you.
essentially kicking the can
Wait,
down
wait,
the
wait,
road.
wait. Hold it, Carlos. We have to go by, yeah, that's what he basically said. They were kicking the can down the road. But we need to do this orderly, so. Are you through?
I'm through.
Maritza is next, unless you want to wave to Carlos and then.
I really have two comments.
Yeah.
First, I'm really concerned that today is the day that we are offered statistical data on how much a commuter, a user on our road of 836 is actually paying. That today is the day that we're offered that information. Because I attend meetings and this particular information should have been given to us a lot sooner. But my biggest concern is not that, because I know that I pay $1 every time I go through that gantry, okay, on 17th Avenue. And I know that when I take it now, if we don't decrease that rate, I'm going to pay a hell of a lot more. It actually means I pick it up on Lejeune and got you, and I get it through 17th, and it's going to get me again too, which essentially is going to be more. So, but let's just leave that to a side, because what's really important to me now is if 60 was so detrimental, if it was so detrimental to even consider, then why on earth was it ever even presented by staff and all these consultants that we pay hundreds and thousands of money? Was this even presented to this board for consideration? Because it was. It was presented and it was recommended. Now, you change your mind just like I changed my mind. But quite frankly, you must have done the numbers and you must have felt confident that it was okay to proceed if you offered it to us, because you wouldn't have offered it to us for consideration if it was something that would be detrimental to the agency. So now, you know, I sit here and I'm saying, why was it offered to us? It was there, but we didn't take it. Why did we go to market to the community with it and we didn't take it? And today, it is the opposite. It is a 360 degrees. It is wrong, and it puts the agency at risk. The other one is right. I find this now, you know, highly precarious.
Ms. Gutierrez, if I could respond, because I think it's important.
See how you drop from chair to Ms. Gutierrez? No,
chair.
really.
I always say chair.
No,
Oh,
please.
why?
Let's not get in.
Come on.
Yeah. But people misunderstand.
Yeah. When we presented the board, when we presented to the board the October workshop, and I've got the presentation here, I'm an engineer. We have a set of assumptions that we base, and based on those assumptions, there's outcomes. The assumptions that we made was that coverage ratios must be maintained at 1.4 times the coverage ratio. That's the board policy. That's not indenture, that's board policy. That, at that committee, at that discussion, was like 1.4 is not good, it needs to be higher. It needs to be at least 1.5. That's number one. Number two was we were going to build our program, which we had a work program that was going to be funded in pieces, as traditionally we have. 83628, which is the project that I mentioned from 57th Avenue to 17th Avenue, was broken up into how many segments, Alfred? It was 3 segments with multiple phases in them. We presented that to the board. We actually had funded Phase 1A of the program in the current work program. Irrespective of 60 or 70 cents, it was in the current work program. We pulled that project because the board instructed us to not piecemeal it, to bundle them together and advance them, because we didn't want to be under construction on 836 for the next 15 years. Those are the reasons, Madam Chair, that it's different, because the conditions changed, the variables changed.
All right. No, I'm going to ask for the next speaker is Carlos, but would you yield to Jose, who wants to ask a question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Director, I need eye contact. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Going back to your original presentation, you had said 65 cents to 75 cents was the presentation, and the ratio was 1.4. Is that correct?
60. There was 5 options that were presented to the board.
Please.
And the first option was 60 cents, and it yielded all of the results that were presented to the board that day, and there's a spreadsheet that I have here. And the option 2 was 65 cents. Option 3 was a combination of 60 cents and 75 cents. And option 4 was 70 cents, and option 5 was 75 cents. All of those options met the variables, the conditions that I had presented.
But we asked you to go back and adjust based on 1.5. And what was the conclusion?
The 1.5, based on the conclusion, is that at least the 70 cents is what works for the 1.5.
Okay, I really appreciate that answer, and I wanted to thank you also for that history, because as a new board member, it's very helpful, so I appreciate that. Thank you for that answer.
Carlos,
I will have to say that by deferring to Jose, I have given up my comment because he has already made the point. But I would like to say this. Throughout this process, these increases were highly vetted, discussed. They were absolutely scrutinized to the penny. Every consideration was given to the various sacrifices that would be made at the different points. And I will tell the audience that it is a very difficult decision for this board to balance what we would like to do with what we have to do as a fiduciary responsibility. So one of the things that we must balance as a board is what is good for the financial health of the agency and the health of the program going forward as a system to serve you better. And it's a very difficult line to walk. All of those considerations were given when we discussed all of these options. And all of these discussions, as I recall, were met with great approval from the part of the board, with very few exceptions. We understood the impact, we understood the ramification, we understood what we were giving up, we understood what we would gain. And the decision was a very educated decision. So thank you, Jose, for making the point, because I think it's critical that we understand. The 1.5 was a decision that brought a lot of things to a head. The decision to move forward with a 1.5 debt service coverage ratio, as was the desire to bundle all of the packages together and move forward with a unified and holistic approach to the problem. We are not trying to kick the can down the road, which is also extremely important that we understand. It'd be a lot easier to kick the can down the road and make that the responsibility of someone else. That's not what we're trying to do. And that's all I have to say.
All right, Mr. Rodriguez Pina, then Luis Martinez, and then Mr. Wortman, and then you. Go ahead.
Question for the Executive Director. You know, one of the questions that was made earlier, or comments actually, was about have we exhausted all the possibilities? And if you can expand a little bit, because I think knowing the knowledge that I have of the internal workings, I think there are some relevant points to be shared with the audience that when we make these decisions, this is not just an isolated decision. This is a decision as a whole. And we all in this volunteer board are businessmen and women that bring different perspectives. So I think it's relevant, and particularly in this case, I think it was Representative Friesen that said, please consider that. I think that we can expand on that as to the options that we are considering and have been considering and will be considering.
Yes, Mr. Rodriguez-Pina, I think the representative asked us to look at all the options, and he mentioned some options as when you get to the airport, you don't pay tolls when you get in and out of it, or that the visitors, that all rental cars should have SunPass in them. Well, the point of 836 ORT is to close the system. The point of the 836 ORT is that we're putting mainline gantries. We're introducing one new mainline gantry between Milam Dairy Road and Red Road to capture the free movements between the Palmetto and Lejeune Road. We're introducing the westbound gantry at 17th Avenue to capture the westbound movements from I-95 west. And then we've introduced various ramp locations so as not to force people off the roadway like what happens today on 27th Avenue, and it over-congests 27th Avenue, people trying to get off before the last exit. So we did exhaust all the options. We looked at every option. If you go back to the workshop and you look at the different rate combinations, when we said 60 and 75, we actually considered putting different rates at the different gantries. Whether you were commuting, the further you commuted, the lower the rate was at the particular gantry. We analyzed all of that and put it before the board. And so yes, we did exhaust those options. At the end of the day, there are needs. There are real needs on 836 that need to be met. We know what the price is going to be, and this generates the revenues to be able to implement them.
Okay. Mr. Martinez, you're next.
Mr. Rodriguez, are you done? Do you have any further? I have a couple of matters. Number one, I went over, Mr. Diaz sent us a bunch of, today, a list of over 800 comments that were made from individuals relating to this. And one of the things that caught my attention was there seems to be some misunderstanding that some of this funding is for projects that are not funded, we are currently in the middle of, that we need these funds to complete funding of the projects we're doing right now. And Mr. Rodriguez, if you could clarify that for the audience, that this has nothing to do with current projects that are being dealt with, or are they? That's what I want to make sure.
Correct.
Great.
Mr. Martinez, as I stated at the March 19th meeting, because a lot of the comments that came that day was that we were doing a toll increase just to finance either the US 1 Busway Express project or extending 836 Southwest to the Kendall-Tamiami Airport. None of the capital money that is going to be generated with this adjustments on 836 and 112 are going to fund any of that construction. In fact, you passed a policy also on March 19th that says that any new project moving forward must stand on its own within the first 5 years. So there is policy in the board that the board adopted that will address what the rates of those new projects are, how they have to meet financial tests, and we will work with our consultants and our experts to figure out what can we afford moving forward on those. But this rate increase has nothing to do with US 1 or extending 836 Southwest.
And another matter that I read through the process and some of the letters, if I'm correct, by statute and by bylaws, we are precluded from using any of these fundings for public transportation as well. We are limited by our requirements to what our projects, correct? Because that is one of the other things that was mentioned by many of those who have been concerned about this.
Well, actually, our statute that creates this is very broad, and it actually talks about multimodal transportation. So in our history, from even before my time, it has been the standing policy of this agency to partner with other agencies. And one of those agencies that MDX has partnered with is Miami-Dade Transit. I'll speak to the time that I've been here. We've partnered with them on buses on shoulders. We've done environmental work and given them property so they can extend the airport link to the intermodal center. We've co-funded the Miami Intermodal Center along with the Florida Department of Transportation. And we are currently in partnership in 2 different Tiger grants, federal grants, that one is being led by Florida International University and the other one by Miami-Dade Transit. We're co-sponsors on both.
For the future.
This is so that you can introduce, for the future, so you can introduce express bus service with informed traveler information which is also a partnership with IBM, the private sector, so that you can introduce east-west express bus service from West Kendall to the FIU campus, to the Miami Intermodal Center, and to downtown. So we have been working with Miami-Dade Transit in the past.
Now, insofar as, because there's been comments, and the reason I'm going into this is because, as the board knows, I voted against at the October meeting. I voted against 60 and the 70 cents. So I am not comfortable with any type of agreement. But I want to get things clarified here. How many jobs at 60 cents do we anticipate will be created in construction during this period, if we can have an estimate? And I know this is a guess, but just to give an idea, because there was discussion about this affecting economic.
Alfred, you've done the analyses on that. Hold on a second. We have that answer, but let me look it up.
I appreciate that. Now, one of the things that I am equally concerned about is I voted against the CPI increase, which is now our policy. How does in reference to either the bond issue, the fact that in the future under CPI, if we start at 60 cents, there is a potential in the future that will increase, or we will start at 70 and increase. Is that taken into consideration when we're doing our allotment, et cetera? Because that is one policy that obviously I was not in favor of, because that almost automatically infers that there will be another increase down the line of a percentage. And if that has been taken into consideration, I'd like to know.
Mr. Martinez, we do take into consideration the policy that was passed and the fact that there would be CPI adjustments, and we also understand that the board can defer them up to 3 years, I believe, and that's how we build our finance.
Right, but my issue with the CPI, and I'm going to get back on my horse about this, is that it needs the board to move it to delay it.
Correct.
It's not something that automatically has to be brought forth for the increase. So
Correct.
the increase is implied to occur unless a board member brings it.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, there's a question that's still outstanding.
And I'd like to answer that.
All right, well,
please.
then, in the meantime, Mr. Wortman.
I'd also like to expand on Mr. Martinez's comment. And also, it's direct versus indirect jobs, how many are employed during construction, and then it trickles down from that to the support beyond that. Okay, I'm not sure. I think, Mr. Reagan, you may have what do you call it, some of the answers. I know the formula, or I used to know it, was something for every $1 billion spent, it was so many thousands of jobs that were created, and at 124 million, which is the delta, the difference between the 10 cents there, okay, that would mean direct and indirect jobs. I think it's something about 3,000 to 4,000. I would be probably closer to 800 to 1,000.
Board Member Wortman,
directly.
I have the information. I have the information
You have the
on
direct
jobs.
and the indirect also.
I did it by job years created or retained, so we're using the federal formula. With 60 cents, 4,000 job years are created or retained. In option 4, which was the 70 cents, 5,200 job years are created or retained. And Alfred and consultants can define job years.
And one
further statements or
Mr.
questions?
Chair,
Yes.
if I can respond to Mr. Martinez's question, I just want to be sure that we're very clear, because I have the policy that was passed in front of me, and I think that this.
And I may misunderstand.
This question came up the last time, and I clarified it. Now, I want to read this part about the CPI so that everybody is clear. A CPI adjustment will be applied to system-wide toll rates on July 1st, 2017, period, end of sentence. The CPI will be that published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It says what the index is. The next sentence after that, thereafter, the CPI will be applied annually unless 2/3 of the MDX board votes not to implement the CPI for the current fiscal year and determines to defer the application of the CPI to the subsequent fiscal year. However, toll rate adjustments for inflation under this subsection will be made effective no less frequently than once every 3 years, and when implemented shall reflect the cumulative annual changes resulting from the annual application index rounded to the nearest nickel. So I just want to be clear. The policy that was passed says there will be a CPI July 1st, 2017. I will also note, just so everybody has it in context, because some of the other board members were not here, the prior policy said that the CPI would go into effect July 1st, 2010. That has been put off a number of times. So the CPI, there has not been a CPI even in accordance with the prior policy, and it's being put off. But it does say now that it will go into effect 2017. That, you know, depending on whether there is an increase, but if the index does indicate, then that first sentence says there will be a CPI applied July 1, 2017.
Right.
Thereafter, the board can vote
Thank you.
to delay it.
Thank
so
you
for
for that
clarification, the
clarification.
first one is going in regardless, it's the, any other after that.
A CPI adjustment will be applied system-wide July 1, 2017.
All right,
Thank you for
Mr.
clarification,
Holland.
which is why I voted against it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wortman, you still have some.
If Mr. Holland would like to go first, I have a batch of stuff to go over. Okay, let me start.
Well, Mr. Wortman, I'm just, you know, we're now at 6:45, and I
I'm
think
gonna
Gus is
do it
about
as
to
quick as-
leave. We're
I'm
about
gonna-
to lose his vote.
Everything in under 3 minutes.
15 minutes, he's leaving.
Well, I'll try to do it in under 3 then. Okay. Number one, the comments I heard were people have to pay to get into a traffic jam, which I understand. I'm in the same traffic jams. But this would be helping to pay get out of a traffic jam. It's too late to create a panacea. It's not going to be perfect, smooth flowing, but at least it's going to help, you know, people get to where they need to go in a reasonable period of time. It's not perfect. The capture rate, exhaust all options. One of the first people they talked about that. We are closing the system, and I think what Mr. Regan has said, you know, we've looked at all the numbers that closing the system will do, and we've taken that into an account. Okay, transit part that wasn't mentioned, it's sustainability. Yes, what we're doing is a major support. Transit in 30, 40 years has stated a flat 3% market share using massive amounts of money. What we're doing, and it's not a sustainable system, we're helping provide the guideways for the BRT, for Express Bus, working with the MIC. We're working very closely, and it's a sustainable system that hopefully will grow and increase the market share. Tolls will cause diversion to other roads. I think we went over that a bit. It will for a short period of time, but the latent demand within a few months, it will fill up again. So that's just a temporary thing. Suppress economic growth. Okay, it's actually the reverse. Construction, the jobs, and the improved traffic flow in a short time will stimulate the economic growth. I'm going to come back to it in a minute. Okay, non-toll revenue. Okay, and what we're doing, it was said that it's been a few years, we talked about it. Yes, it has, but we have a few programs already starting finally, and we have more coming on. I mean, from the advertising, which is helping fund the frequent driver program, to now the electronic charging, which we're looking at, and several other things, and that will help fund programs that will make, that will help the people who have to drive these roads every day. Okay. The petition I looked at and the wording, okay, which Mr. Guzman has brought up earlier. Does anyone have the wording? I've seen this, and one of my courses in college, research methodology, what you say, okay, and how you ask the question can help determine, you know, the answer, okay, and it's very pointed and leading the way it's done. It's not a, how do you say, an open type of thing with two sides being spoken. It's very one side. Okay, let me move on. Okay, and public communications, we've done way more than the basic requirements, went way beyond that, and made sure we did. Okay, let me follow this up, close this up, one saying that 10 cents difference at each of these plazas, the four of them, 40 cents round trip. According to what we talked about, the 2/10 of a gallon at $3.50 a gallon, that's 35 cents each, 10%, 70 cents. For every 10 cents we will, if we didn't charge the extra 10 cents, we went with 60 instead of 70, it's going to cost, for save that 10 cents, cost the people 70 cents in gasoline they're burning that they wouldn't be. Also compressing the time. The only thing worse is like a 20-year Palmetto Expressway section by section project. The people that I've talked to, and I've been on committees, CTAC, 26 years. I've been over 700 public hearings. And it's the construction time people really resent. If we could do this in one shot, get it out of the way and done, we're going to save the people time, we're going to save the people money, and instead the money is going to be spent here on American jobs using steel and concrete to help fix the inadequacies of our existing system and make it more usable.
Thank you, Mr. Wortman. Mr. Holland.
Thank you and good afternoon, well, actually early evening now to everyone. Actually, I walked in because I really wanted to hear everything on both sides of the issue. And as most of you all know, I've always been pretty strong on trying to figure out how do we best move traffic in this town. As most of you all may not know, some of you do, prior to Maritza, myself, and a few others getting on this board, I think Dade County at that time was ranked number 4 in overall congestion. Now we've moved up to, and improved rather, to about number 15 because of substantial improvements that have been made to the system to kind of move transportation. And if you look at it, this has always been a hot spot for people to want to come. Everybody wants to come to Miami. And when you look at that, you have to ask yourself this question: why do people want to come here, but we have no major Fortune 500 companies that are located here, other than American Airlines, which is now going through their bankruptcy and reorganization, Carnival Cruise Line. Our major employers are those two entities and Miami-Dade County. And when we talk about being a major city and creating economic development, we have to think outside of the box. Mr. Reagan and those put forth a proposal when I first got on here. Was a study that said one of the major impediments to us gaining economic vitality was our transportation system was horrible as far as moving goods and services. And as much as we may not understand that, that is a major value to your community. For a major corporation to come here, they need to be able to move those goods and services back and forth on roadways. If, right now you're looking at dredging the seaport down to 50 feet, cargo and shipping at this point will probably be second only to tourism in this town. How will they move those goods and services once they come into the seaport? It's going to be difficult. Even though that's major jobs that will come into this community, we're going to be hemorrhaging on those roads if we don't find ways to move traffic back and forth. So we have two major impediments to Dade County being economically strong. And we already, I think a couple of years ago, we were ranked, I think, 4 or 5 as one of the poorest cities, the city of Miami was, in all of the country. The two things are transportation and education. Most time people are willing to make some investment into education because kids are kids. We want to make sure the kids are provided for. And we'll do the same thing for the elderly. But here's where the rubber hits the road that nobody ever wants to talk about. And I recognize there were many legislative folk and commission folk and political folk, mayors, who have come up and saying, hey, you know, don't do this right now, we're hurting. But I want to draw your attention to this. Most political folk are elected for a 4-year term. Most transportation projects from conception to completion average anywhere between 10 to 15 years. So what do you think is on a politician's agenda when they get elected? Is it something that's a 10-hour completion, a 10-year completion, or something they can do within a 4-year time? I say that to say this: oftentimes, your transportation or your infrastructure in your community lags tremendously behind everything else that goes on. In fact, you don't have to take it from me. Look at your water and sewer issues right now, that now we've been forced to put bonds out to redo that whole infrastructure system that has been derelict and neglected for many, many years. Guess what? Your rates are going to have to go up to deal with that. What we're trying to do is get as much stuff to get transportation moved on the front end so that you're not faced with major expenses on the back end, because they will be major expenses. And everybody, as much as we'd like to use roads and move, we're the first to complain that it's congested, I can't get where I want, the bridge collapsed, who's responsible for this? I mean, we're ready to throw the daggers, but nobody's ready to be part of a solution. So when I look at the red light cameras that have been approved, there's, tell you the cities: Miami, North Miami, Aventura, Doral, some of which are represented here today, Aventura, Doral, Opelika, Sweetwater, Miami, Cutler Bay, Surfside, West Miami, Florida City, Bell Harbor, Miami Springs, Coral Gables, North Bay Village, Homestead, Key Biscayne, El Portal, Metley, and Hialeah Gardens. And I guarantee you there was not a majority of support in any of those cities for red light cameras. But those cities found it very important from a safety standpoint to have to do something. There's also revenues involved. Now, although this is transportation related, none of that money comes back to your roadways. If people want to be part of this solution, it's easy for somebody in the city to say, don't do it. Are you willing to invest something on these roads that run through your city and help your residents move goods and services? And most of the time, it doesn't happen. That money goes into other services within their community. At the state level, there's been a number of ways to put money in transportation. And guess what? It is not a priority.
That's right.
It is not a priority. But at the end, you get stuck with a major city and you can't do anything from an economic standpoint because you are hemorrhaging and you're suffocating because you can't move goods and services back and forth.
All right, Mr. Holland.
So to me, I have a concern that if we don't start doing something to move this here without the political stuff, and the reason MDX and the mayor will attest to this here, the reason MDX was created many years ago is because politically nobody would ever bite the bullet on dealing with infrastructural issues. And that's why MDX was created the way that it was, so somebody can honestly focus in on it and try to take care of it. And what you ought to be proudest of, if you can be proud of something, is you're talking about no more than 8% of the revenues that come from your tolls going towards administration. And I will guarantee you this. You compare this against any of those cities that I listed, the county, and anywhere else, and look at what their administrative budgets are, and I guarantee you they hover above 50, if not close in some instances, to 70% administrative costs. And we're talking 8%. So we have been great guardians of your money while trying to make sure that your infrastructural system remains intact and even better than others. But it's no different than if you were to buy a house. We still have to pay mortgage on these roads once they're built. That's what the bonds are. But if you buy a house and you pay your mortgage on time every month for the next 30 years and you don't do anything else to that house, boy, you're going to have major problems on that house while you're in there. You have to make those infrastructural improvements, whether it's roof, windows, doors, something is going to start giving away, and that's the same thing that happens on these roadways. We have to invest back in them. It's not that you just build them and they're there forever. And so with that, I'm open to whatever position, but I'm leaning very closely
All right.
on the 70 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Holland, for that very well thought out statement. I'm going to do something which I never do, and that is I'm going to waive my speech. And I had a long speech in the interest of trying to get Gus Pago to the airport, but giving him the opportunity to vote tonight. So, Gonzalo, yours is the last
Mr. Chairman, if and again, it's hard to follow Mr. Holland, and he's a wonderful, one of the best expositions of MDX, one of the best definitions I have ever heard since I've been here. It may even be the best. So thank you very much, and that was well said. I just had some technical questions. We normally pick some projects that we have a 5-year project on. So our wish list, Mr. Executive Director Rodriguez, what's exactly how many millions if we had the ideal world?
The needs plan was $800 million. The needs plan that is ready to go, if you look at the unfunded needs of the community, and even what's in the long-range transportation plan, it was $6 billion.
Okay, so the $6 billion, the ideal world of projects that will make this a first-class city, more or less, transportation-wise.
Correct.
Now, so the $800 million is what percentage of the $6 billion? Oh my God! Okay, we need a consultant.
7-8%, sir.
Okay.
I'll send you an invoice for this, but it's 13.3%.
Right. Now, we're talking that the 10-cent reduction means $110 million. So if I told you or anybody that for 10 cents you can get $1's worth of goods, that'd be very interesting. But what is that percentage of the 70 cents? Now, how much do we have to cut back? By what percentage do we have to cut back our projects?
We would have to cut it back $110 million, capital.
All right.
So
Is that out of the 800 million?
We really want to
That's
get to.
enough. That's
Okay. Shelley, unless anybody else wants to ask a question, and then I guess a right to vote on this thing. But if not, Shelley, I recognize you to close, and then let's take it to a vote.
I move the adoption of Resolution 1308 relating to the modification of open road tolling rate for Main Line 836.
All right, it's been moved and seconded by Maritza. Is there further discussion on this item? So that Gus can vote?
Okay, Pam, Okay, let's get it straight, what we're voting for and against. If we vote yes on this, we're voting for the 60 cents toll rate.
That's correct.
And if we vote no, we're voting for the 70 cents.
Yes is for adoption of the resolution, which is 60 cents. That's correct.
Everybody knows what. Thank you very much for clarification. Is there further discussion or clarification? If not, call the roll, please.
Mr. Fernandez Guzman.
Nay.
Mr. Gonzalez.
No.
Ms. Gutierrez. Mr. Evia.
No.
Mr. Holland. Mr. Martinez. Mr. Rodriguez Pina.
Yes.
Mr. Wortman. Secretary Pago. Treasurer Sanabria.
No.
No. Chair Foray.
I vote no. So,
Seven
so
to
what's
five.
the count?
Motion failed.
The motion fails by what's the vote, please?
7 to 5.
7 to 5.
Okay.
There further discussion on this at this time? Right. Maria Luisa, I have a memorandum that I wrote. May I? And since Pam holds me to such strict standards on the sunshine law, this is the only way that I can properly communicate. So I will save you a long speech, but this is, since we're about to get into the strategic plan, would you please take the, and I apologize that it's 6 pages, but I would be grateful if you would read this before we get into the strategic plan. And that's the only comments that I have. I thank you for your patience.
Mayor
And
Ferrer, quick comment when you.
Yes, please.
Mayor Ferrer, may I ask of staff to at least pull together some sort of resolution to go to Budget and Finance that speaks to these bond revenues being limited to 10 or 12 or 15% administration at the most whenever, and give you guys time to flesh that out so that we can put some limits on how much can be used for administration versus going directly into roads.
And we will also bring back to this board a proposal for a discount program, frequent user program, sooner than later, based on all the comments that I've heard today.
Mr. Director, I appreciate that. That's actually what I was going to suggest, that we make sure we bring that back as quickly as possible.
Is there a motion? Is there anything else to come before this board?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
There you go, you got it.